Boom! We are live Friday evening. Welcome. Hope everyone is well. Weather is trash. Don't know what's happening in Canada. It's annoying. Stop it. Great podcast tonight, guys. We're going to get this started straight away, mate. I don't want to even mess around, okay? What's good, y'all? This is C-Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 67 of Beer and Other Shit, the podcast, Adjunct Series, Quarantine Edition. This evening, we have a great podcast. This is a fantastic brewery that we've been we were talking a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, to get down there. Didn't work out, but we're doing it virtually. But before we get to that, you know what time it is. Sponsor. This week's podcast is brought to you by Dr. Nick's Amazing Man Stuff, beard products for humans with facial hair. These guys are based out of Massachusetts. Excuse me. And they, we don't really do the sponsors thing a lot here. And, when we connected with these guys, it was through a good friend who was based in Vermont. And I really, I had a chat with them. We connected really well. They basically have a real craft beer ethos to the way they approach these beer products. So everything is made in the US, including the bottles, the caps, the whole lot, and the oils. So the oils come from Hawaii. They're from a Reiki master who blesses the things and sends them over. And I learned from Nick that there's a difference between essential oils and fragrance oils. So the essential oils are like, for this bottle worth, it's probably like $200 because they're actually concentrated oils with, made from the actual products that they're representing. So if it's a vanilla essential oil, it's actually been soaking in vanilla. And they essentially, this is one of their main lines called Beard Beer. And there's an IPA and a stout. There we go. And the IPA is based on Maine Brew Co.'s Lunch IPA. And the stout, I don't recall, but it does have like a coffee, vanilla, chocolate vibe going to it. And it's fantastic. Dr. Nick, who's not a real doctor, but he's a doctor of beard oil, he told me to rock the IPA with one of their beard balms over the top. And I'm not a beard oil guy. I got these in January. We started working with them in April. So I was using them for 3 full months. And it's lit, man. I feel like it's made everything really smooth, super, super clean. I just enjoy using them. As you can tell, these things are sort of like almost empty now. I've been genuinely enjoying these products, and that's what we're about here. And one other cool thing they're actually doing a Brewmaster series where they're collaborating with major breweries in the Northeast. So, and they're actually making beard oils after their big beers. So they're working with Treehouse, Trillium, Lawson's, Vitamin C, all those sort of like hype breweries to do it. So I can't wait to try that, like drink the beer and smell like the damn beer too. So if this is interesting to you guys, we have a coupon code, of course. It's BAOS21, BAOS21. Link is in the description. And if you order 2, which you're probably going to need more than 1, that'll take you over $40. They're about $20-something each. And if it's over 40, you get free shipping in North America. Bam, go do it. Your beard and the person who is with the person with the beard will appreciate the nice smells and the luscious facial hair. With that said, this evening, this is, like I said, a brewery I've been wanting to connect with for a while. I was fortunate recently to be able to drink some more of their stuff. I'm incredibly impressed. I'm really excited to hear the whole journey. We have Jon and Dave from Elora Brewing. Guys, welcome. Thank you for hanging out.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Genuine pleasure. Really glad we connected. It was a few years ago, right? I think it was, Jon, maybe you and I spoke, if I'm not mistaken. It must have been 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I think you you reached out and asked if you could link up with the tourist office in Elora.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember now.
Yeah, and I think it was. It must have been like close to the end of the summer, or maybe it was at the start. But it didn't end up working out. But yeah, maybe we can get you guys out soon to the brewery, because it'd be awesome to hang out there.
Yeah, always the preference. Yeah, we typically ended up having to travel only when we were working with tourist offices, because all of the travel wasn't pocket friendly as such. And they made it, feasible to continue to do that. So, and it works pretty well because they love it. It's promo for the area, for the region, for the brewery. Everyone kind of wins out of it. But, at least we got it done this way. So before we get into all the beer stories, we, of course, are thirsty and we're going to crack this bad boy right here. the original draft. I imagine this is like a flagship lager. 4%, nice.
No, this is a one-off that we've just kind of released. Brewery's done it before, but it's kind of like more of a seasonal, just like a super light. It's actually just like a modeled after a macro kind of lager, just like clean and crisp and simple. Just a kind of a beer and easy drinking. Just a beer, yeah.
Just a beer.
And like we designed it. I mean, you got a glass there. We designed it just to drink it right out of the can. Actually, it's just like an American light lager. And yeah, I mean, you could do whatever you want with it. You could do a keg stand, that also works, or a red solo cup.
Either or. I like that. Just no frills, just beer. I can't even just sipping that from the can. I don't know. It makes me. I feel guilty even just doing that. Good.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna be a little fancy. It also looks nicer in the photos. To have it. Oh, stop.
Actually,
Go.
It's cool to see. We use a bunch of corn in this beer, and it's actually probably the palest, clearest beer I've ever made.
Yeah, they don't. That clarity is insane. That is crazy. Super pale. So it's the corn that makes it. That gives it that sort of color.
Yeah, the corn we use about 30% corn, so pretty high, and just kind of modeled it after like just how traditionally the North American adjunct lagers were brewed.
Right.
And part of the process is keeps it nice and pale too. Like we kind of limited the hot side extraction of the malts and stuff like that. Just kind of like some of the big brewers do. They have really thin beds of grain in their lauter tun, so they can just like rip through these lauters and just kind of minimal malt flavor coming through. We just wanted this to be just a super clean, super crisp beer. And with this hot weather, I mean, it was snowing today here, but last weekend was super hot, and it was great. Yeah, it was snowing in Elora today. So.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was one of those depressing days where yesterday it was beautiful, and it was like it must have been 17 degrees and outside in like a t-shirt and sunny, and then today it was just grim.
Snowing. That blew my mind. It's May 28th today. That's ridiculous. That's a record. I've been in Canada almost 11 years, and I remember it snowing in May, maybe early May, a few years back, but not when it's basically June. That's just mean.
I think last year we had a snowstorm like the second week of May. It was kind of the same thing. Like we had a lot of really good weather, and then it just got cold for 2 days, and then last year we got dumped on like must have been a good 10 centimeters of snow in mid-May, but then it was gone within 3 or 4 days.
So it's not so. Did it stick around today?
No, it didn't.
It didn't. Okay, good. That's all you can ask for, right?
But just seeing it was weird.
Yeah, it's like particularly. Did you have? We had a few days that were like 20. No, hang on. What day is it now? It's Friday. So there was like I swear earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken, it was like I'm about to bust out the air conditioner type of thing. Like feeling. Yeah, you did that.
I had mine on. I had my AC on for a couple days. It was almost like 30 degrees here.
Yeah, like, it was like feeling like 35 type of thing. We had at least like the humidity. So like to hear that it was snowing is a disgrace. Like that's infuriating. That's just wild and unacceptable. It's crazy. We can talk about the weather all night. No, this is great. It's interesting you said there, Dave, about the malt extraction here. I never really thought about like those sort of North American adjunct lagers with the corn lagers that are aimed to minimize the malt extraction. So is it like there is malt in it, just not a ton, and it's focused on the corn and such?
Well, it's not, sorry. We still are extracting as much of the sugars are close to. What we wanted to minimize the time the malt was hot, just so we don't risk any kind of off flavors of, say, like from the husk of the grains or anything like that. Because the long, say you have a really long mashes sometimes and really long lauters can kind of lead to a bit more graininess or kind of a harshness to the beer. And so just reading some of the old textbooks is what the big brewers do there is they just have really thin mash beds. So like I forget what it is, 12 inches or something like that, and that just helps the laddering process just to be screaming fast and not have any of that pickup of any kind of anything from the grain or the husk of the grain.
Interesting. Excuse my ignorance, what's a mash bed? Is that just like how thick it is at the bottom?
Yeah, so there's different styles of brew houses, but there's typically like a 2-vessel where you mash and lauter out of the same vessel. So like lautering is separating the liquid wort from the grains.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a style of brew house that we have, and it's a separate mash tun, a separate lauter tun. So we do our mashing process in one vessel. We send the whole the whole grain slurry kind of over to the lauter tun, and from there we start the process of filling our kettles of lautering from there. And that's good for a lot of reasons. That would be more of a German style brew house versus the 2-vessel is more of an English style, and They both have good and pros and cons of each. But that also, having the extra vessel helps us kind of brew more in a day too, because while one beer is lautering, we're mashing the next one in ready to fill another kettle.
That's great. Okay, I've heard the term before, but I couldn't picture exactly what it was. Okay, that's great. Yeah, this is really cool. This is exactly what you are. I feel like I've seen more styles like this kicking around lately, as far as these sort of light crushable lagers that are meant to not necessarily mimic macros, but be that type of thing. It's essentially probably your gateway beer, even though this is like a one-off. This is the type of thing that could totally convert somebody to crafts for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, with the hot weather, we just wanted to have fun with it. And it's kind of like going for the macro thing. It's a little bit in the sense it's a kind of a bit of a gimmick to make such a light beer, because craft can be a lot of things, and oftentimes it's not that. But yeah, we just I don't know, when we're hanging out, we like to try out every kind of beer, but then when we're hanging out, everyone just wants a lager, right? All the brewers just kind of,
I bet, yeah.
After you drink everything for so long, you just kind of like, you don't even have to ask, you just pour someone a lager and they're happy with it.
I like that. Don't even have to ask.
Yeah, and sometimes, like you kind of said, it's kind of good to sort of stretch out and sort of look at other styles that not everybody's like a craft beer drinker that sort of gets sort of introduced to our beers and stuff like that, and even some craft beer drinkers, like everybody's going to go through phases, right? Like just look at where beer was 10 years ago when it came to like IPAs and stuff like that, sort of where they are now and where preferences are. So it's like that stuff is going to like ebb and flow, and it's like it's more about fun and just seeing where we can go with beers, not necessarily just. It kind of reminds me of like high school when I listened to like punk rock music, and then I was embarrassed to say if I listened to any other style of music, right? Where now like everybody sort of listens to all kinds of music, so it's not necessarily like bad tone like IPAs or lagers or something like that. You can kind of walk around in between all of them,
which is great. That's a really great comparison. I guess if you all of the crazy, the haze and sours and all that stuff, you're sort of like almost preaching to the choir with them. People, craft beer nerds are already drinking that stuff and they want to try something different, but within, that sort of wheelhouse. Whereas like something like this, a nice light lager that's attractively presented, that's crushable, that's still got tons of flavor, can actually convert someone who is a Coors drinker or something across to craft beer who might not be willing to give it a try. And I think these are undervalued for sure, at least by the wider population. Within the industry, I'm sure most people understand that if you don't have a gateway.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I think Dominion City like a while ago, like posted something on Instagram of like holding up a sign that says like rate craft lagers higher than 4
For
on
Untapped.
Untapped
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it, like as Dave mentioned, like there's a lot that goes into making a beer like that. Even though the flavor profile is simple, there's a lot that goes into like making a beer so crisp and clean and all that kind of stuff. Like it's not just like the simplest brew and then just like strip everything out, right? Like it's well thought out, and it takes time and effort to kind of do it. So there's just as much I guess like training and forethought to kind of make a clear super easy drinking lager as there is to making a super hoppy hazy IPA or pale ale or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. Someone told me that making their non-alcoholic beer cost more money and more time and energy to make than exactly what you're saying, like a double IPA or something like that. So I feel like people generally maybe don't really think about that, because this feels and looks easy, simple. Historically, it's been around type of thing. But slowly, people are starting to appreciate it more, which I think is you guys. Is like when I say you guys, I mean like brewers. Like you were just saying before, Dave, that the brewers, you work a shift, you're lifting heavy malt bags and around all these like boiling kettles and shit. The last thing you want is a 9%, double IPA, whatever. You want this light thing to just quench your thirst. So because you guys in the brewery want that, you keep making it more, and I feel like that's where that new trend came from. So thank you, because it's great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and it's sometimes people kind of some craft beer fans kind of like maybe look down on them or something like that, but just because these beers aren't as loud as a double IPA or a imperial stout or something like that, they, like Jon was saying, there's just as much goes into them, and from the standpoint of like tank time and all that stuff, these beers cost us just as much to make, if not more, because we could have done 2 or 3 IPAs in the same time in that tank that we took to do this one. So it's kind of it's a big commitment on our part, and but that's one thing we're always trying to have. Like we have our core brand 3 Fields Lager, which is kind of our one of our house beers. Yeah, thanks. And but we're always trying to have like another lager on tap at all times. So we're kind of have a bunch that we go through kind of seasonally. And this is the one right now. We just kind of finished up our Dunkel, and then we got a couple of ones coming out for the summer that we're really excited about. So
love to hear that. I don't know. I guess I didn't tell you earlier. We're live and people comment live as well. So Beer and a Bozo, shouts to you, bro. He says, my wife loves Shine, which is coming up in a couple of beers. I just need to convince her it's sessionable. I feel like it's, what is that? Is it 6?
6, yeah.
6? Hey, well, yeah. We'll find out soon enough. And he's also saying the lagering time frame can be sped up now with fermenting under pressure. That's the first I've heard of that. What's that about?
Yeah, you can. Some people claim you can kind of suppress some of the esters with fermenting the beer warmer and under pressure. You talk to, I mean, I haven't really tried that so much. We do kind of sometimes ferment under pressure for some different reasons, but you talk to any kind of like German or Czech lager brewer, and they'll tell you otherwise. That there's reasons why this traditional method of brewing them cold and slow exists, and certain things like you're going to get some different like small but desirable levels of sulfur and things like this that develop during the fermentation process, and then over a long lagering time, you have to kind of taste the same beer, and as you taste it over these times, it does make a difference. After you're hitting the 6 weeks of kind of lagering versus after 2 weeks, I do find that there's maybe it's just a personal preference of mine, but we kind of like to stay true to the tradition of the low and slow kind of lager fermentations and lagering time.
Low and slow is a good episode name. I'll write that down. I like that.
Yeah. You can pair that with brisket.
That's a great one. So with that said, let's get into your beer histories. Whoever wants to go first, like how did you first, discover craft beer and get a passion for it, and then we'll build those two stories into how the brewery came about. Whoever would
Go
like
ahead,
to
John.
Dave, you want to go first?
Ooh, look at you both, gentlemen.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll
Canadian.
go first.
After you.
Yeah.
No, you go first.
So I feel like I might have been a little bit late to the game, where so I finished up university in like 2010, and I was kind of exposed to like some craft beer back then. So like I think Mill Street was sort of like just starting to kind of get out there, and BAOS was kind of starting to pop up a little bit. And then didn't really pay too much attention to it. And then I moved to the UK for my master's degree, and it was there that it kind of like really slapped me in the face. So this was about 2012. Yeah, 2012. I moved to Leeds, and so my housemate there. It must have been like the first or second night that I was there. We went to a traditional English pub in downtown Leeds, and I think the very first pint that I had was something from Black Sheep Brewery. I can't remember. So like they're just sort of like a Northern England like small batch cask ale. And it was mostly like real ale that really got me into craft beer. So that was like really taking off in the UK and well, sort of having a bit of a resurgence, not taking off. So I'm pretty sure it was Black Sheep. And then that night we went to this place called North Bar, and North Bar was like, it was like the beer bar, and just had everything there. And the beer that like really knocked my shoes off was called Halcyon from a brewery called Thornbridge.
Oh, I know that.
And
I know that beer.
I think
Yeah.
it was like, have you? Yeah.
Yeah,
like
they bring it in LCBO.
Yeah. Every once in a while they bring it over. So Halcyon was the beer that really knocked my shoes off when it came to craft beer. And then so like that was like early 2012, and then for the next like year and a half, almost 2 years, like every single day I was drinking beer over there. I was like riding my bike a lot and drinking a lot of beer. I think maybe there was like in like the 500 600 days or something like that I was there, like there was maybe 5 days that I didn't have a beer. And
doing it proper.
And like it wasn't like anything like, oh, like I have a drinking problem or anything like that, but it was sort of what you do. Like I finished up at school and just met up with my mates at the pub, like went for a bike ride, like had a pint afterwards, like went home, had dinner, watched some TV, went to bed, kind of thing. So
right.
it was amazing, sort of just getting submersed into that beer culture as well, where you sort of like you start hearing about and sort of knowing about beers, and then you just like go to the beer bars to like try and find the beers. So like we would go on these nights where like Thornbridge again, we would go on these hunts for Jaipur, which is like their sort of
West Coast IPA, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of West Coast, but like when we were sort of over there, it's like the real ale version of it. It's like way more sort of laid back than what you get in the bottle.
Gotcha.
And so like we would go on these like Jaipur hunts where we would just go to as many places as we could until we found Jaipur, and then we would just hang out and drink Jaipur for the rest of the night.
That's
so
awesome.
That's like where I really kind of like fell in love with it. And then do we want to get into that kind of like leads into the brewery a little bit, but like maybe we can hear where Dave kind of started with it, and we can kind of loop back
then kind of loop back in. That's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, Ontario, and probably just the same as a lot of people, just not happy with the selection of beer you could get at the beer store. Always just kind of looking for something more, and that kind of led me to discovering dark ales as as dark strong ales, the only thing you could find around my parts. And but I always just loved beer, and always just tried the new beer at at someone's yelling there at wherever you could, and that's a cool thing about beer is everywhere you go kind of has their own beer and their own traditions and stuff like that, and so it just kind of branched out of that. And then I remember some of the first craft beers. Yeah, probably one of mine was the Mill Street Tank House.
Yes.
And I just remember and just being blown away because that was the first like real bitter beer I had, and it was incredible. Like especially back in the day, it's kind of knocked my socks off and be like, oh, this is what a beer can be. That's really cool. And around the same time, I at the place I was hanging out, the Boathouse in Kitchener, they had that, and they had a Wellington SPA on tap as well. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I'd been traveling around for a couple of years, and I wanted to move back home to Ontario. But I knew if I was going to move back home, I wanted to do something cool, and I wanted to brew beer. I knew knowing nothing about beer at the time, and so I moved back, and I just started calling around. I remember calling like Stonehammer because I knew they were around and I had their beers before, and like Creemore, and they were just like no, you can't just get a job here or whatever. But then I was this part is actually people kind of like to laugh at this and have fun with it. But I was working. I did a bunch of landscaping, so I was working at this landscaping place that in the wintertime we were selling Christmas trees. So I was selling Christmas trees, and then one of the sales guys from Wellington came in, and I said, "Oh, I like your beer. I've always wanted to work in a brewery. Think you guys are hiring?" And he's like, "Actually, we're looking for a brewer, so you should come on by." So I stopped by and gave him my resume, and basically got hired and started brewing the next week, kind of thing. Wow. And so I was at Wellington for 8 years. Just started off as just kind of an assistant brewer to the head brewer at Wellington, and through all the kind of big expansion there, and with installation of the new brew house and a bunch of brands of beer. Like I helped launch the Hellas Lager. That was kind of my baby while I was there, and all that stuff, and then the whole contracting side of it and all that stuff. And then
you're Lager Dave.
I'm Lager Dave, yeah.
Oh, fuck off. It just kind of like hit me, and I'm like, okay, we've spoken before in the past. Okay, all right. Okay, it's all making sense. Keep going. Sorry to cut you off. That's fucking awesome, dude.
And
okay,
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too far here, but yeah. And then I've been at Elora now for the past year and a half, and it's been awesome. But it's been interesting because I basically only worked at the brewery within the pandemic. So I've been like, it's kind of been a wild ride. But I think we're just really excited. We got an super awesome brew team there. Andrew and Aiden, we call them the A team, and they're just killing it on everything. And we're just like such a great team together, and like super stoked on everything we're doing right now. So I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too far here, and I'll move back to Jon, and because we missed the whole opening of the brewery story, but
this is awesome. This is great. You guys are working together.
Yeah, pretty much the brewery just in my mind didn't start until you got there, Dave. So.
Make me blush here.
Real quick, Beer and a Boza says, did you work with George Eagleson when he was there?
Yeah, I worked with George while he was there. Yeah, absolutely. And I knew George when he was working at Stonehammer, because Stonehammer is literally around the corner from, or was around the corner from Wellington. And so I know George very well, and he's a good friend of mine.
Love it. I don't know who that is, but I love it. Perfect.
You got to give a little bit of a background on who George Eagleson is.
Is he he's an Ontario brewing like legend or something that I should know?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you should know George. He's kind of like George is like the most loving, the most outgoing, the most kind of eccentric kind of guy. And he kind of, I think he probably knows more people in the brewing industry, has more friendships in the brewing industry, and he's just like such a warm-hearted guy. He's working at Niagara College now as the head brewer there. Cool. And yeah, worked with George for he wasn't at Wellington for long. We worked there for a brief time, and he's worked at breweries all over Ontario, and he's got some crazy stories. And we worked with Charles McLean, because F&M is part of Stonehammer. And Charles McLean too was kind of like an Ontario kind of Ontario legend because he's just been brewing what he loves for so long. He just has a love for these English style beers, and he's in there's I really admire that. It's just kind of doing what you love to do, and he's always made really really awesome beers.
Okay,
but yeah, George, you got to get George on the show.
Yeah, it sounds like I got to. That's awesome. I love hearing about this stuff because there's always like, as much as I feel like I'm trying to tap in with and cover as much as possible, there's always something that I've sort of missed. So that's all the legendary stuff, which is super interesting because these guys have sort of been around. I imagine he's been around for a while. That's the point, right? Like he's been everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's been brewing. I'm not even sure how long, but I'm sure he's been brewing for over 20 years.
Yeah, see that. Yeah, those type of cats are fascinating to talk to because they saw all of the things that we're living now. They saw all those changes, and it sounds like I got into beer about. Sounds like about the same time you guys both did. So like I came up with the Mill Streets Tank House and Bo's like Trade and shit blowing my mind. I'm like, wow, and we did a trip one time. I used to have my old co-host Scott, was a good friend of mine. Still, we did a trip early on, just sort of discovering beer. We went to Wellington, we went to F&M. I remember it being around the corner in like a little strip mall thing to pick up some stuff. Yeah. I went to Wellington. Wellington was like this tiny little like house thing, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So it was like it's all in Guelph, right?
Yeah, all in Guelph, just kind of on the outskirts of Guelph there.
Cool.
Guelph and Wellington kind of still had. Sure, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like a lot of the craft beer stuff in Ontario sort of like started Guelph and Kitchener, right? Like Wellington is how many years old now?
Got to be 30 plus.
30 something?
And then 36, I think, yeah.
Yeah, 30.
It was founded the same year I was born, yeah.
Jeez.
1985.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Brick Brewing out of Kitchener that was turned into Waterloo, but like they started like in around the same time, didn't they?
Yeah, I think a year after they started, and as well as Sleeman, right? Sleeman's in Guelph. So yeah, there's a lot of history in that town, and Wellington's cool because when Wellington was started, and you said the look of it, it was started by a guy Phil Gosling or something like that, and Charles McLean was the original brewer there in 1985, and these guys just started it because they loved English ales and they couldn't get any. So they just started as a hobby. They weren't in it, they weren't trying to make money. They didn't really need to make money. They were just kind of doing it so they could drink their own beer and supply like the local bars with their beers. And it's really neat. You see some old photos of Wellington, and there's like the rooms are stacked to the ceiling with cask beer, and it's really neat. And there's an old photo of Michael Jackson planting a tree out front of Wellington, and it's cool. It's got some really cool history there, and it's like John said, like Guelph and Kitchener in general, there's a lot of kind of history there of these kind of breweries that started craft beer in our area.
Amazing.
Can you back up? Did you say Michael Jackson planted a tree out front of Wellington Brewery?
The beer Michael Jackson.
Not the Michael Jackson. Not the pop star. Different Michael Jackson, yeah.
The beer guy.
Okay.
That's an unfortunate name that he has.
The beer guy.
I think he passed not too long ago.
I think it was not too long ago. But he kind of like he did like a ton for the beer world. Of just kind of traveling the world and kind of writing about the styles that were like very local and nobody's kind of really ever heard about. So yeah.
Very cool. I got some work to do out there. No, that's great. This is great to hear. So coming back now to loop that back around to, I guess, John, you were in Leeds, and I think you were about to say something that inspired you to probably come home and start the brewery.
Yeah. So I wrapped up my master's degree, and while I was over there, my old university. So I went to the University of Waterloo, and my old housemate, I moved home, and he's like, "Hey man, I started a brewery." So like they were sort of just about to open the doors of Block 3 when I was moving home.
Oh, like Kevin.
So this was when Brian was the head brewer there.
Okay.
But same brewery before Kevin.
Kevin's
And
not a original. Okay, my bad.
no, I think Kevin might have been at Wellington when they started.
Yeah, he was at Willie too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were just about to open their doors when I was moving home from Leeds, and I so I was like really jealous, obviously, because like your friends are opening a brewery, and then that's just like wow, that's
That's
really
what I wanted to
really
be doing.
cool. Yeah, so I was just about I was sort of in the process. I was trying to go back to Leeds to do a PhD, and then the funding opportunity that I was kind of hoping for didn't end up working. So I had like a year off where I missed the PhD applications for the University of Waterloo. I got invited to do a PhD at UW, and so I had a year to wait before I could start. And so I was like overeducated and underemployed, and just working at um, at my friend's landscaping company, and I was actually living in his basement too. So so we would just like get rip roaring drunk, uh, like after like 13 hours in the sun, and started talking about opening a brewery too. And so we loved the idea of sort of having Block 3, just for a little bit of context, is in the middle of St. Jacobs, which is like this touristy town just outside of Waterloo, uh, where it was kind of settled by Mennonites, and the thing that kind of made it sort of an interesting place was like a lot of the local Mennonites sort of like set up like retail shops for their different trades. So there was like this like broom maker, and there was like some bakeries and like all different kinds of stuff. And so they set up their brewery like right in St. Jacobs. So all the tourists that would come to town would like walk down the street and then just like walk right into the front door, and then they would sell them a beer.
Right.
And so we thought that was like a really cool idea of just having people sort of just walk in the door and then uh, and then taking beer. So Don and I were like, we should do this. And so we were like, okay, so we can't do it in St. Jacobs because Block 3 is there. And so Elora was a place that I went to sort of through university. It's about 25 minutes north of the University of Waterloo, and it's a beautiful little town with like right along the Grand River. So it's really scenic, a lot of cool hiking, and then there's the Elora Quarry, which is this old rock quarry that is right beside the Grand River. So they dug it out, and then once they were done mining it, they just let it fill up with water. So they kind of built like a little bit of a beach around it, and you can do like some cliff diving off into the quarry. So I would go there in the summers, and it was really starting to kind of like pick up as a tourist destination. And so we were like, hey, why not Elora? So we started looking around, and we kind of went into this old hardware store, and we were like, this place is cool. It was for sale. And we were like, oh man, but it would be a lot of fucking work to turn this place into a brewery. And then so we like walked away from that place, and we're looking at a bunch of different places. And then while Don and I are looking where to put a brewery, this guy, one of my other partners, Jim, walked in to Block 3 one day, and my housemate Phil happened to be behind the bar slinging pints that day. And Jim said to Phil, hey, like, I love what you're doing. I love the vibe. It's really cool. I'm thinking about doing the same thing in Elora. And Phil was like, well, actually, my friend is looking at doing a brewery in Elora, so you should talk to him. So my buddy Phil at Block 3 linked Jim and I up in an email, and then we just started talking, and then so we started just like partnered up with him as well. And the hardware store that we kind of tried not to buy because it was a lot of work, but it had like the perfect bones. We ended up buying it, and started, and we like gutted the thing. It was so much fun, but an absolute nightmare. Like it was a year of renovations, like, and we gutted the whole thing ourselves. So like, it's a 165-year-old building, like right in downtown Elora, limestone walls, like a peaked cathedral ceiling that we sort of like exposed and all that kind of stuff. So so as we were kind of building, like kind of ripping apart this building, just to kind of like go down the rabbit hole of sort of what we ended up with, we wanted the same kind of like ideas as Block 3, where like we kind of like have the tasting room up front and then like the brewery in the back. And so as we were kind of like really getting into the construction, we were sort of looking around and we're like, oh, our tasting room is going to be like absolutely huge. And so we kind of went to a bunch of different other craft breweries, and then ended up deciding to put a kitchen in there as well. So we went from just wanting like a brewery that would sell kind of like samples out at the front, samples and bottles out the front door, to like having like a full 135 seat restaurant. So we never intended to be restaurateurs. And oh my God, is it a lot of work? But we ended up with like a full scale like production brewery with like in a restaurant. So we're like most brew pubs, like you've got like little tanks and stuff like that. Like we started with 4 40 hectoliter fermenters, and then now we have 4 60 hex and 4 40 hex in this building. Nice. And like last year we cranked out like just under 500,000 liters from that place. And so like in normal times, you've got like this brewery like smoking through like a ton of beer every day, just putting it out the back door, and then somebody's like eating some French fries and a hot dog like right there. So like we also don't have the brewery like behind any glass or anything like that, where we kind of I don't know if it was out of I can't remember if it was out of budgetary reasons or not, or we kind of just believed that it wasn't. But we didn't end up putting the brewery behind like glass walls or anything like that. So literally you've got like this 160-year-old building, and then in the 70s they put on sort of like this kind of like box at the back of it. So like we've got like super tall tanks back there, like 20-foot ceilings. And so essentially the 160-year-old building ends with like this wood floor, and then our concrete brew floor starts. And like the tanks are like right there, like you can walk up and knock on the tanks and all that kind of stuff. And it's a bit of a nightmare at times, because it's noisy and wet and stinky and loud. But at the same time, like the way that we kind of look at it is that we're not trying to hide anything. Like there's this like amazing and unique process that kind of goes into sort of making beer, and we really want people to kind of understand what that is. We look at ourselves like 80% brewery and then 20% restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up kind of digging into the restaurant portion of things, because we recognize that there's a huge and deep experience that people can have pairing food and beer, right? So we don't have, when you sort of walk in as like a customer, it feels a lot like a restaurant with a brewery, right? But we're 110% a brewery first, restaurant second. And what that kind of leads us to is our values of making sure that what we do in the kitchen and what we bring out to your table really enhances the experience of drinking beer at Elora Brewing Company. So we've really tried to dig into that, and I think we've done a pretty good job of giving people like a good experience. You kind of walk into the building, like it's got sort of like a big, like grand, authentic feel to it, and people just sort of walk in and feel that right away. And so we kind of have them as soon as they walk in, but it's sort of our job from there to show them good beer and like show them good food. So that's a long story though.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for being detailed. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to keep going. I want to grab the next beer if y'all are down. I imagine it's the Elora Borealis Pale Ale.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Do you mind grabbing the next? Just in the fridge. This beer I remember having years ago when it was in a bottle at the LCBO. Would this one be considered somewhat of a flagship? Because this is probably the most consistent beer of yours that I've seen around. Yeah, that's the bad way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is like our number one flagship beer. And John can probably talk more about the history of it, but yeah, this is our like number one selling, number one
Cool can.
Volume.
Yeah, I imagine.
So Borealis originally started out as it was supposed to be just like a one-off, like single hop exploration. Like it started out as like just a Citra Pale Ale. Way back, I think the first time we brewed it was like 2016. And
2016,
like it kind of just it really took off for us. It was originally an American pale ale.
Okay.
And then over the years, we kind of morphed it into more of a New England pale ale kind of thing. So just really worked at sort of getting the haze to sort of like a nice, beautiful, stable spot. And yeah, so when it came time to, we kind of held off on the LCBO for a few years.
Okay.
And then when it came time to put a beer forward, we were kind of looking what our options were, what was kind of floating around the LCBO, and we were in bottles at the time. And so Three Fields was the very first beer that we started with, and we didn't think that a lager in a 500 ml bottle would do that well in the LCBO. So we kind of put Borealis up there, and then it sort of just it got legs and really hasn't stopped. So yeah, it's as Dave said, it's our like biggest production beer. It's probably maybe about a third of our production, if not a little bit more. And then yeah, like I love it. Like I know it's like easy to say, but it's my favorite beer that we brew.
What are the it's fantastic, by the way. What are the hops in this bad boy?
So we're using, like John said, it started off as just a Citra Pale Ale, but we have a bunch of Galaxy in there too. I love both those hops, and I love how they pair together, and you just get this wonderful kind of like fuzzy peach and grapefruit kind of citrusy thing going on, and it's just it really is.
Yeah, it's money, man. It's just like nice and smooth, nice and dry. It's definitely, now you say Galaxy, I'm definitely getting the Galaxy, that signature vibe in there. Tropical, just easy drink, a wicked head, nice little pillowy foam going on. It's fantastic, like 5.1. It's what you need in New England, man. I love it. Really, really killer. Beer and a Bozo saying it's not available in North Bay, so that means it's sort of, you're still sort of rolling it out further, or what's the availability
like? We can get it up to North Bay. I'll talk to our salesperson, or if that person like goes to their local LCBO and goes and asks to talk to the beer ambassador, and tells the beer ambassador that they want our beer, like they'll order it and they'll bring it in. They'll bring in a few cases, and then if people are buying it, then they'll sort of like then we'll keep it rolling. Yeah, so like the LCBO, when you're a smaller brewery, you're kind of defined a little bit by some parameters that the LCBO looks at when it comes to how your beer sells. So like there's a specific volume per store per month that you kind of have to hit. And so if you're not sort of in that ballpark, then they're not going to give you like seasonal beers to put on the shelves, or they're not going to let you put in like a second full-time beer. So for a long time, we've always had to kind of focus more on stores that are a little bit better at kind of selling through for us, so that we can kind of like keep getting like seasonal beers in and more permanent beers as well. So we can definitely get it up to North Bay. So if they ask their beer ambassador and they'll order it.
Okay, I love it. He said he'll do that. It doesn't. Oh, hang on, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. I will do that. I don't think salespeople are going to the LCBO right now. I'm not sure what the deal with that is. Maybe they're not.
Ask him what's the address of the LCBO that you go to. We'll try and get some beer up there.
There you go. Beer and a Bozo. Just comment here and we'll let them know. Look at that. Getting it connected. I love to see it. Now, This was your first LCBO listing. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yep. Beautiful. Yeah, I remember seeing. I swear it was more than like you said, 2018.
We started brewing it in 2016, but I don't think we started. When did we start in the LCBO? Maybe a year later, so maybe mid 2017.
Okay. Oh, actually, thank God for Untapped because I would have checked in. The first I had it. Oh, May 21st, 2018, and January 19th, 2018. So the earliest two times I had it. So I imagine then that's probably maybe it was 17. I don't know if I would have got it super early, but yeah, I just remember being really impressed by it. Like the label was cool; it stands out, and it was just like a great, particularly at the time. If you look back to say 2018, I recall that time being, it was like the haze was really only starting to pick up in Canada, whether it was Ontario or Quebec. It was even slower here, to be honest. In Ontario, it's a little faster. I found, but there wasn't many that were available that were solid. Like I don't recall trying this beer as an American pale ale. Would that be accurate too?
Yeah, I think by the time we got it to the LCBO, we were starting to kind of nail down the haze in it. So it was a bit of a learning curve for us. Like at the time, I remember we were kind of chasing the trend a little bit. Well, it felt like chasing it, even if it sort of was maybe one of the first ones. Like we knew that this was sort of a beer style that the people were really latching onto. So we were really trying to get onto it. The beer, the New England IPAs that we had, like we absolutely loved it. So we were really trying to go after that style. So I'm glad it kind of stuck out, and I do kind of remember that it was sort of maybe one of the first ones to really start hitting the shelf as a hazy IPA, and I don't know why we never did this, but we always just sort of like considered it like that's what pale ales should be. So we never advertised it as a hazy pale ale or anything.
No, it doesn't say that even on here. No.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's stupid marketing on our part, but it just kind of seemed like that's what the beer should be. So, yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
It's definitely not stupid. Okay. I think at the time it would have made it stand out more in the sense there was more of a differentiation. I feel like in 2021 it's like if you see IPA, it's almost you assume it's going to be hazy unless it says American IPA or West Coast IPA or Black IPA or something on there. So maybe at the time it might have made a difference. Right now, I wouldn't even waste. I don't think it's going to make a difference at all. And also, it's been around for so long, right? People know it's like a safe, reliable go-to, which feels like. Do you know what's interesting? When the pandemic started, one of the things we were asking people, like online, just trying to get a bit of a vibe, like what are the buying habits of craft beer drinkers? And what we found were people wanted lower ABV beers, and they bought more of the same beer rather than try to do what people used to do, than get one or two of like the one-offs, because this was reliable when there was a stressful time and no one knew what was going on. They probably wanted something that was comforting, and that was a reliable beer that they can know that it's going to be great every time. So having something like this around for that long, I think it's money, definitely.
Yeah, and that was sorry. That was always something that we strived for. Is consistency, and it's always Dave can talk about this a little bit more, but it's always difficult to lock in consistency in craft beers, right? There's so many variables, and like we don't have a ton of high tech equipment or anything along those lines, but we definitely always strove for that, and people are creatures of habit, right? At the end of the day, so if we were sort of lucky enough to get in somebody's hands once and they liked it and bought it a few times, then we damn well better be putting a consistent beer out so that when they go back to it, it's just as good as that first one that they had.
Definitely. What were you gonna say before, Dave? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, as an outsider at the time when Borealis was first coming out, I mean, maybe like Jon said, maybe you kind of felt like you're chasing the trend, but like you got Elora definitely was one of the first breweries to kind of like go for that and have that succeed and kind of do it good. And I remember just being a fan right from the start. And my wife too, like right as long as you guys have been around, Elora's been her favorite beer, and the Borealis is like, she gets mad at me when there's not in the fridge these days. she got a hashtag now, hashtag we're out of Borealis. She just texted it to me like, and so and
that's awesome.
And yeah, and it's good. I just love this beer. And as John said, with the consistency, I'm so happy with the consistency of this beer. Like, we've been banging this. I think we're on our 10th batch of it this year. But even just over the past year, just like, I think we've been really kind of nailing the consistency of that one. And it can be hard. There's a lot of variables that can happen in the brewery, and then like I'll throw it Aiden and Andrew again. These guys are just kind of like our main like brewing team. They're just like really killing it, and to help on like the recipe, like we haven't really changed this beer at all too much, but just kind of like it was just changing the process a little bit of how we go about things, and like kind of, the hops are the same, but like maybe just kind of when we add them and things like that. And we're just like at a really good point with this beer, and feel really good about it.
I love it. No, it's great, man. Everything I've had from you guys, like even recently, another one, I imagine it's in this series, was I think it was called the Elora Australis. It's like, yeah, which was with the Aussie hops.
Yeah.
That was killer. My God. I was just like, and the 3 fields, it was the first time I had that, and it was with the 3 different grains, with the barley, the wheat, and the rye, and the rye gave it this extra little spice. I was just like, every single thing I've had from you guys, I've just been like, whoa, that is crazy. And I don't know, it was just, I don't know if I didn't expect it to be crazy, but I was just always like wowed by everything I've had from you guys. In the Lodestars, I've had a bunch of those, your fruited sour series as well, because they're in the LCBO too, if I'm not mistaken. Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe it'd be good to get a bit of a picture of the type of stuff from sort of both of you guys, of, what type of stuff do you typically do? Because if people mostly know you for this beer we're drinking right now, which I imagine, like you were saying, if this is the majority of your production, then that's probably it. But, if people want to look deeper, whether they ordered online or came down to the brewery or found other listings in the LCBO, like what sort of stuff do you guys make? From what I can tell, I mean, you've got the crispies, you've got the haze, and the sours, but I imagine there's probably other stuff that maybe people haven't seen or heard of as much.
Yeah, so those are the 3 styles that I think we really think that we've nailed well. So 3 Fields was the very first beer that we ever did, and so we were a craft brewery in 20 what year did we open? 2015. That launched with a lager. So that was kind of a weird thing that we did as well. But yeah, right out of the gate, and but it was something that it was nerve-wracking at the time, but I'm really glad that we did it, and we've just kind of been good. I don't know if it's the water or what, but those are the beers that have really sort of done well for us. We've just knocked it out of the park every time that we've done those beers. So we've kind of settled in on kind of being sort of okay with being a brewery that people can expect good pale ales and IPAs. You can expect awesome lagers. We got Lager Dave. and then when we started doing sours, like those went over really well right off the bat as well. So so we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves or anything like that, but when we talk about sort of what we're good at, those are definitely the things that we focus on.
Are you guys doing like stouts and maybe do you have a barrel program or anything like that?
Yeah, so we're actually just in the process of starting up a barrel program and more of a kind of just more like more sour beer, more funk and that sort of stuff. So
cool.
We've got some barrels just in the right before Christmas that are kind of doing the thing that we're really excited about. And then we got a bunch of other stuff that's not just kind of holding out. We have these kind of like small small 10 hect tanks that we have a bunch of them, so we can we're just experimenting with different things. So we just bottled a Berliner Weiss that's we're really excited about. We're going to release this summer. And then last fall, we went out and we foraged a bunch of crab apples, and we used those, and or we kind of fermented the crab apples on themselves, this carbonic maceration thing, and it's turning into a really cool beer. We're going to bottle that, so you see us doing a bunch more of that stuff as well.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Keeping it, switching it up, keep it a bit different. Beer and a Bozo, actually, you just mentioned it before, but do you guys mess with the water at all? I mean, or is it like because you're in this town next to the Grand River, you might have sort of access to a bit more, unique, interesting water up there?
Yeah, so our water is it's probably a defining feature in our beer because our water is really hard. In particular, we have really high sulfate, which can dry out beers. So we do a lot of adjusting with water chemistry. So we do add a lot of say calcium chloride to our hazy beers to kind of balance it out. I think that kind of really gives it this really like Borealis or our other hazy beers. It gives us this really kind of like big kind of creamy mouthfeel, but then still has a dry finish. And I think the dry finish is like kind of really key for it makes you want another one. It's like there's still good body, there's still you can still get good malt and some good sweetness, but then it just really helps it finish dry. And then we do, for a lot of our lagers, we will bring in water for that, where we're hoping to get like a bit of a water treatment system going on there, but we will bring in soft water. Like for the first beer we had, it was like very, very soft water, and that kind of just goes with the style and goes with the soft palate and the simplicity of it. So yeah, we do mess around quite a bit with the water and kind of obsess over it probably a bit too much. We could probably talk about this for way longer than your listeners and you guys want to hear about it.
I was actually going to ask, just for people, without going too deep, I guess, like maybe a higher level question for folks who, I know I've read this before, but I'm kind of more asking for a reminder, but maybe people would be interested. What is the general difference between hard and soft water? Like, what are the defining characteristics of those two things?
I think that's kind of a loaded question. The best is to think about famous brewing cities around the world. So when you think of Pilsen, where the Pilsner comes from, it has some of the softest water in the world, and that's how they can load that beer up with bitter. That the Pilsner Urquell is 44 IBUs or something like this, and how they can but it doesn't taste like that. If you made that same beer with hard water, you're going to get quite a bitter beer. So you think about the Pilsners from the Czech Republic, brewed with very soft water. They can load it up with hops, and you're not going to get that bitterness because a lot of that comes from the sulfate. So when you have a higher sulfate, you're going to get more of a bite. So that's why that's why they make the kind of like the cleanest, softest beers. When you say you move to Germany and you drink a German Pilsner, they have quite a bit more sulfate in the water, especially I think more as you get north, and as you get north, the Pilsners get more bitter and drier. So I think that's a good example. Then another one would be like the Dortmunder, which is kind of really hard water. And actually, we were able to scale our water pretty close to the Dortmund water when we made a Dortmunder this past fall. That turned out really nice, and they have kind of quite hard water. And that's the one example of a hard water lager that is kind of the famous example of it. So those are a couple of the famous examples, and that's all dealing with what we call permanent hardness. We have like a temporary hardness too. That it was basically it's a balancing act of pH. So back before we knew about this, that's why you have places like in England and or in Ireland that brew really good dark beers, really good stouts, and it's because they have a higher alkalinity, which is they needed the dark malts, the acidity of the dark malts, to make the proper pH for the beer to taste good. So that's why naturally those places that made dark beer likely had higher alkalinity in the water because it had to balance the pH to make a drinkable beer. Because if you're making a pale beer with that water and not, say, adjusting or having the resources to adjust the pH, then it's probably going to turn out to be not so good beer, harsh and astringent and things like this. So it's cool to look at the historic brewing cities of the world, and it's pretty much always the water has a defining features and why those beers are the way they are.
I feel like water is
that
probably
just made me miss travel.
right. Yeah, to be honest, I tried to think about it. It's the only way to get through this, Even if
just put yourself somewhere else.
Right, I mean, that's where you can drink the beers from all around the world. I guess it's as close as we're going to get for a little while. No matter what they say, it's it's going to take a bit. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fascinating. I feel like it's an underrated element of beer outside of the industry. Within the industry, people pretty much know that water is super key, but within the general population might not realize that it's pretty unique, and it's that really is what makes a difference, particularly with stuff like I guess everything, but a lot of the hazy beers are the one where it doesn't. You need to treat it a bit to really nail this mouthfeel that's super unique. So I love to hear that. Okay, so you guys, did we finish? I guess we did finish the story, didn't we? I feel like we keep doing tangents and coming back, but I guess I think we got to where we wanted to be, right?
Wait, what story?
With like the brewery story and where it got to. I'm sort of having like a brain fog.
I think so.
I think we did, right? Okay, sweet. So
where do we end? Was the part where Jon got drunk and got naked and was streaking down the street or something like that? Do you want to take off from there, Jon?
I think we should start from there.
that didn't happen. There was a lot of like
urban
there was a lot of
myths.
drunk nights when we were starting the brewery. So just a story kind of going back to the construction phase of the brewery. There was so much drinking that we did when we were, and you sort of need to when you dump all your life savings into starting a brewery, you're gonna put back a couple of beers, and so there's a ghost story for the brewery too if you want to hear a ghost story later.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But so
I got time.
one of the first nights that. Yeah. Okay. One of the first nights that we had the keys to the building, we for some reason we were drinking down at the Shepherd's Pub, which was a pub that was sort of Elora's kind of it's a town that goes, the downtown's like down a hill and then a bit of a downtown sort of along the river. So Shepherd's Pub is down at the bottom of the hill and the brewery's at the top of the hill. So we got absolutely just rip-roaring drunk at Shepherd's Pub, and it caused a bunch of trouble down there probably. And then walked up to the brewery and decided to, for some reason, to like leave the power off to the building. So we had probably started to demo it a little bit. And so one of the first things that went out there was like a spiral staircase near the front of the building, but like the main electrical panel was sort of like halfway up the staircase to the second floor, and so we ripped the staircase out, and then we didn't have any real way to reach the electrical panel, so we kept on turning the electricity off like at the main panel every night instead of like hitting light switches, because like we were always like, when you're doing demo, you're exposing wires and stuff like that, so you want to make sure that the main power is off just in case. So we went in and just went down into the basement, and then went to the farthest part from any speck of light that could kind of get there, and we just like sat there and first, none of us were smokers, but one of us had cigarettes, and we just sat there in the pitch black and just like smoked cigarettes and just drank beer for like 3 hours at like 2 a.m. Yeah, it was good fun. Like starting a business with a bunch of guys is just it was an absolute riot at the time. It was just such a whirlwind of that. There's a lot of stories about just how craft breweries start, and it's usually a couple of friends, and you kind of start like buy some small tanks and like grow it up and stuff like that. But we kind of went in and sort of and just jumped off the deep end when it came to the renovations of the building. Like we were more of a construction company for the first year and a half of our brewery than we were an actual brewery, right? Like that's what the majority of the work was starting our brewery. It was construction. So a lot of that was just a lot of drinking, breaking stuff, and then hiring somebody to put it all back together when it was time to actually build it.
I love it. Yeah, it sounds like it would be a drink fest. Really, what else are you supposed to do? Like you have to just be getting drunk and dealing with it. You're putting, like you said, life savings into this venture that, you know, at the time is actually, what was it? You said 2016 or 2015?
So we bought, what year? We got the keys to the building in August of 2013. No. August of 2014. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Got the keys August of 2014, and then renos for almost a full year, and opened 2 weeks before Labor Day of 2015.
So August. Okay. So then even back then it was a bit more of a risk. I mean, craft beer was starting to pick up pretty strong, but I feel like it wasn't where it was at today. So you were ahead of the game, so I can imagine the
yeah, we were like the 155th brewery or something like that opened up in Ontario back in 2015. So I remember there was a website that kind of kept track of that stuff. I forget what it was called, but so at the time they kind of kept track of like, oh, these breweries are in the planning stage, these breweries are opened, and all that kind of stuff. And then and then now, what is it in Ontario? Like over 450 or something like that?
It's over 400 for sure, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
okay.
It's nuts. So
crazy.
Like we're one of the old breweries now.
I was going to say.
Opened in 2015.
I didn't realize you guys. I thought, when I think of you guys, I guess I think of when I discovered like this bad boy, which would have been 2018 according to Untapped there. So I guess I didn't look into before then. So yeah, I feel like, you know, I never thought of you guys as one of the older ones, even though old means 2015. But like it's definitely when you put it in that context, when now there's like 3x in the province, how many there were when they were, what's that, like 6 years ago? That's pretty crazy. It's a whole new era.
Yeah, it's nuts. And like I said, we held off on sort of wider distribution outside of like the Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph area for a good 3 years.
Why was that?
We didn't have a ton of tank space. So whatever we were making, we were still figuring stuff out, right? We were trying to figure out how to actually make beer in any sort of reasonable volume. So to think about trying to give beer to the bar down the street and then sell it out of the fridge, taking on the LCBO was a big thing, and we didn't really need to do it because we were kind of maxing everything out within a 20-minute drive, right? So so it was a good 2.5 years, 3 years before we really got into a wider distribution model, and even back then, I don't know how you would have gotten Borealis from an LCBO in
this is Toronto, almost for sure. It was Toronto. Like my girlfriend's mom lives near.
Okay, there you go.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. I live in Montreal, but my brother lives in the East End, and my girlfriend's mom lives near Fairview Mall type of area, North York. So, like, I know I would sort of frequent LCBOs around there before the pandemic. We're usually in Toronto like every month, so whenever I went there, I would always swing past LCBOs and all that type of stuff and just grab interesting shit and bring it back. So I definitely would have been around then. Were you? I imagine, unless I'm completely bullshitting you and I got it, I was somewhere out closer to you guys and grabbed it. But back then, do you think you were distributing further?
We might have started going into Toronto around then. We started pretty slow. So yeah, maybe it was early to mid 2017 that we started in the LCBO.
Okay.
And then in 2018 we started dipping our feet into Toronto. We were always sort of warned that like, oh, Toronto's like this scary place and like that's where breweries go to get lost and stuff like that. But like we've done fairly well in the city.
Good.
At the LCBOs and then some beer bars and stuff like that. But
I love it. Beer and the Birds, I was just saying, had no idea that you guys were around this long either. So it's not just me, at least.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah,
yeah.
It's yeah.
Oh, hang on.
We're old, but we act young.
Oh, but then he goes, they were probably at cast days when Sam got arrested for peeing in the hole. Potentially. I imagine he's talking about Sam from Sawdust City, potentially.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Sam is a wild man. I was at the very first cast days ever. I've never been there since, but I've only been to the very first one where there was 20 casks on the patio of Volo on Yonge. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is flat, warm beer. This is trash. And I never went again.
Yeah. When was that? When was the first one?
I think my guess was 2011 or 2012.
Okay,
one of the two.
Yeah, it's a very like specific type and style, serving style of beer. So it's, I mean, the Welly's done the Cast Fest for a bunch of years, and it is great fun. But after a while, everyone's just walking around looking for a cold carbonated beer.
It feels like you guys got the best of it because you guys are over there.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, and even I feel like cask gets such a bad name over here too, because like living in England, it's a like spectacular way of drinking beer,
right.
Especially I think North England as well. Like, so even within England, the way that they serve cask ale is like differs based on sort of where in the country you are. So in the north, so it's kind of like there's a line and a half. In the north, they have a little aeration tip on all the cask pulls, and then in the south, like they don't have it on. So the aeration like obviously puts a lot of air into the beer and makes it a little bit more effervescent, and it's definitely a little bit more flat when you're down in London. But
interesting.
But oh my gosh, like go to North England and have like a proper hand pulled cask ale where all the bars are actually cold, so that the cask beer is just in this actual dungy cellar, and it's a game changer.
Everyone,
right?
Sorry, dude, go for it.
I was just saying, I think a lot of places maybe around here don't really do it right. It's not like John was saying that there's that tradition and that history of it. And I think a lot of places say, or bar might say, oh, we'll grab a cask, and then they just serve a cask. But there's few places. I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 places that I've been at that serve cask ale that have kind of done it right around here, and I mean doing it right for as far as I know. I haven't been to England. One of those places being like the Woolly in Guelph, and they've always kind of have. I mean, when in regular times they always have like 2 cask beers on, and I'm sure there's a couple of places in Toronto that do it as well. But a lot of times, I think it kind of gets bad rap for that too.
Yeah, and it could just be that like it's one of the, sometimes the experience is a part of the deal. So if you haven't tried it there, like you were just sort of saying, John, like if you don't go to England and try it, because this is not the first time I've heard it from a brewery owner or a head brewer or something like that. People that like, I'm like, If they tell me, I'm like, all right, I trust you. I've heard it like at least half a dozen times, so I'm like, okay. I remember when I lived in Toronto in 2004. I did like the working holiday visa, and then I traveled around Canada and the States and went to the UK and did the Europe thing. And I remember being at a pub. My cousin lived in Manchester, so I went to visit her.
Okay, yeah.
And we went to a pub to do trivia, as they do, and they had the John Smith, like the bitter, and I believe it was on cask. I remember taking like 3 sips. I'm like, no, please, someone else drink this. And I think, I think it was just I didn't appreciate it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I think if now, knowing what I know about beer, I start just like you guys, Mill Street and BAOS and all that. Then you go through the ambers and browns and porters, and then to the Belgians, and then then the trend and haze and smoothies and pastry stouts, all this crazy shit. Then you come back to the lagers again, where you're about that. And I feel like I would appreciate it now, whereas before it would have been lost on me completely. So I'm not against it.
If you go back to Manchester, I still don't think you should have a John Smith's.
Is that like a macro? I imagine it's a macro, right?
It's like a macro brewery that also well, no, it's not really macro. In terms of size, I would say that they'd probably be like a Great Lakes in terms of like size okay. to region. Yeah, because they're widely distributed, but like they're not a crazy massive brewery or anything like that. And obviously the logistics of the UK and getting a keg or a cask of beer from north of England to anywhere else is way different than getting a cask from even Ottawa to Toronto, right? It's a 2.5 hour drive to go from Leeds, which is far north, to London, or maybe it's like 3 hours. But even still, like that's still like a delivery day if you really want to grind your delivery driver.
Totally, yeah, it's a different kind of vibe, but it's fascinating that it's the whole cask thing. Maybe that's one of the trends that will come back eventually. It seems like a lot of people are into it, so I mean, it might come back. You never know. Beer and the Bows is saying he guesses I'm not ordering a Welly's cask in a box. Probably not, but maybe eventually. Granite do a cask in a... What's cask in a box? Is it like people sell like a physical cask? Can you grab the next one for me? I imagine we're going to do Shine next too, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah, we can do Shine, or we can do the Australis, because Australis is kind of the big brother to Elora, the Borealis.
I don't think I have that. I think I had one can.
Oh, you don't have that one? Okay.
No, I have...
I see, yeah. Let's do Shine.
We can do that. I think I had one can of it, but I think that was before we decided what we were going to do for this evening.
I see it.
So if this one's cool, I'm here for it. The Australis was fucking so good. Tell us about this one, guys. So this is a 6% New England IPA, New England style, I imagine. I didn't even look at it.
Yeah, New England style.
There we go.
Yeah, we just call it IPA, but it's kind of
course. What's the hops in this one?
So this one is primarily Mosaic, Simcoe are the main kind of hops in this one. So a little more on the dank side. We do actually use a bit of locally grown hops in this one. A little bit of Cascade as well. And it's actually a guy who just grows hops outside of Elora, and he's a fellow Aussie, and he's a great guy, Dean, and I mean we like him a lot, and we like his hops, and so we got a bit of his hops in this beer too.
There's an Aussie hop farmer here. That's awesome. That's awesome. Good for him.
We'll have to, when you come down for a visit, we'll have to hook you up.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love to hear that. That makes me happy as hell. I know we.
Dean's.
Go.
I was just saying, Dean's a great guy. I think you guys would hit it off.
Do you know where he's from?
John, you probably know him a bit better than I do. Do you know where he's from?
I do not.
I always find that like people when ask him, "Hey, my friend's from Australia." I'm like, "Oh, where are they from?" I'm like, Sydney.
Well, it's like asking. It's asking like, "Do you know Greg from Canada?"
Dead ass. People do that all the time. Oh, I got a funny story. I got two funny stories about that.
Okay.
To compare it. One time when I did that 2004 thing, I was in a bathroom in Las Vegas and I was taking a piss and a dude next to me said something to me and I responded back. He's like, oh, where are you from? I'm from Australia. And he's like, do you know Steve Irwin? I'm like, yeah, he's my uncle. He's like, really? Like, he believed me. That was pretty good. But even funnier, that one was mildly funny. This was crazy. So you know how exactly what you just said, oh, do you know James, whatever? So Tiffany, my girlfriend, and the producer of the show, her best friend Chanel, for some, we've been together 10 years. I'm from Australia. I live here. Her friend Chanel, also from Toronto, she ended up meeting a guy from Melbourne, and then she moved to Melbourne, which is quite funny. They've sort of done the opposite. And she was in a bar in Melbourne, and she was talking to this dude, and they were talking, and he was sort of, oh yeah, my friends live in Canada. Do you know Craig? And she's like, oh, my brother's name's Brad. She's like, do you know Craig and Brad? He's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I do. And it was my friend Angus, who had stayed with me here. I'd known him for years. And he happened to live in the same area that she did. And they're both like big talkers. So I'm not surprised they were talking to each other at a bar. And it was one of those stupid occasions where someone was like, do you know these people? And they knew us. That is so like, blew my mind that of all, there's 27 million people in Australia. And the fact that they're into a bar and happen to talk to somebody from there. So it can happen.
Small world, yeah.
It can happen. Okay, sorry, I forgot to ask you again. Let me just write. I want to make sure I write this down. This has Mosaic, Simcoe, and a bit of Cascade, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. Now, so being this, the other one is 5.1, this is 6. So it's kind of like, is this like would you consider it a ramped up version of Borealis, or is it a different kind of thing you were aiming for?
No, that's what we're kind of talking about with the Australis. The Australis is kind of like the ramped up version of Borealis and made with Aussie hops.
Okay.
The Shine is kind of, so yeah, when I kind of right before I started, Shine was kind of like a bit of a series where it had different hops kind of every batch, but then we got it an LCBO listing. So we kind of just picked kind of the version of it that we liked and just kind of release it wider to the public across Ontario. And we're going to kind of get back into that kind of that bit of a series with kind of with different hops, kind of rotating hop series IPA again. But yeah, we kind of just like, and this is kind of like, I guess is kind of my first project at the brewery is kind of get this beer going. So it's been a lot of fun. We've kind of just been developing it, making little tweaks, and kind of just it is pretty. I mean, as per the guy was asking me for, it is pretty sessionable. I think for 6%, it doesn't kind of it's pretty soft. We want it to be like really soft, really kind of really drinkable. Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, we want to make beer that you want to sit down and have 2 or 3 of, kind of thing, and that's kind of where we're going with this one.
Definitely getting that. The mouthfeel is the first thing that's grabbing me. It's very similar to the Borealis. It's super smooth, really soft is a great word for it. I imagine is that mouthfeel is really the water that we were talking about earlier. I imagine. Yeah,
and the water, and I mean we do put a lot of oats and wheat in this beer, and that kind of give it that soft, especially the oats give it that softness. And that sort of thing, and then as well the water, and just bring it to like the New England style, and just kind of trying to give it a really good body, and at the same time finishing dry, kind of like I guess like the Borealis, and making it nice and sessionable.
Love it. No, this is solid, guys. Super consistent. I'm definitely seeing now having. I mean, these two right now and the ones I've had in the past have definitely had a super, I get consistent is probably the word with the mouthfeel specifically. Like I think that really, that's where it sort of starts, I think, with a lot of New England IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
That you really want that mouthfeel is kind of the hardest part, I think, to nail. So you guys have done exceptionally well.
Absolutely. And I mean, being to Vermont, I'm not sure if you guys have been to Vermont, but it was kind of the first time I went there. So just blew me away. It just blew me away. You just go into like some dive bar in the middle of nowhere, and they have incredible beers. Like, so the beers are the IPAs were just so good. So I mean, anyone who hasn't been there, you when we're allowed to go places again, that's definitely a must go place. And it's like it's not too far from Ontario too, so you can kind of drive there in a day and see a lot. You can get a lot of good beer.
Oh yeah, I feel like since I moved here, because it's 45 minutes from here to the border and about 2 hours flat to Burlington. We've been like, I had to do it for it because I applied for citizenship, so I actually had to mark every single time I left the country. So I've been 12 times for Vermont, and because it's right there. And I always find that the Ontario folks most people I know haven't been, because it's almost like you got to drive. It's probably like what tops maybe 7 to 8 hours, I guess, all the way there, when maybe you could just do that hour and a half and go to Buffalo and Rochester, which, to be fair, it used to suck, but now they're killing it. Rochester has other half and stuff now, so I can understand that, like, it's maybe people might not always make that trip, where for us it's super, like, it's as close as, it's as close as going to Ottawa for us here.
Yeah, good going.
I feel like an 8-hour drive is like a bit of a black hole of travel time, right? Because it's like it's almost too short of a flight to take.
Yeah,
but it's too long of a drive, so it's like it's kind of like which one do you choose? So
well, yeah, man, you make a really good point. I think the only way to justify that in the before times, anyway, was if you're coming from Ontario, like Toronto, kind of Guelph, Kitchener, where you guys are at, you'd have to at least do probably Montreal and then go down. So you do Montreal for a couple of days and check that out, and then you could justify it. You'd have to do like a 4 or 5 day trip and kind of like stop along the way, and then because then it's like 5.5 hours, I think, usually from Montreal to Toronto if you just zip it down. So it's not so bad. And everything in Vermont's pretty easy. Yeah, that was what we always say. Was always, I dare you to find a shit beer in Vermont. Like, I dare you to go.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
It's annoying to me because when we come back here, I find that, do you know what? In hindsight, Ontario is doing better than Quebec as far as better beer at any given venue. So I'm such a snobby piece of shit now that I only go to places with good beer. Like, it's very important to me. But I know, sometimes you just end up somewhere and you're out for dinner or whatever, and you could be somewhere that just has like the Labatt list or something like that, like it's got nothing, and that happens much less frequently, in my opinion, in Ontario than it does here. I feel like we have a bit more work to do there, so I'm impressed with how Ontario is sort of like picking up on it. Obviously the whole country has a lot more work to do compared to the States, but that's not a fair comparison because they're always ahead of the game, those bastards.
Right. Yeah, it takes time, and I mean, you're right though. It is we are getting there slowly but surely. I mean, you think about like 5 years ago. It's not that long ago, but it's a long time ago in the beer world for going out to a bar and getting good beer, and then you look at 10 years ago, like what were we drinking 10 years ago, kind of thing, right? So it's kind of. We've come a long way.
Yeah, it really has.
Dave, 10 years ago is kind of starting to sort of be when we started drinking beer, right? So it's actually kind of like creeping up on that time where 10 years ago for us, it feels like when we say 10 years ago, it's like it seems like a long time ago,
but
in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago.
It's kind of scary.
How old are you again?
Me? I'm 35. Yeah. So this is like totally off topic, but sort of at that age where like I start reminiscing. We've been like reminiscing like a lot with our friends and stuff like that. And so like the albums that we would like listen to as kids. So like NoFX, Punk and Drublic came out in '94, which is like 27 years ago. And when we were listening to that, Led Zeppelin was closer to that than we are to like going backwards to where NoFX was. So like when we were sort of like, oh, Led Zeppelin was like so long ago, that was like 15 years before, right? So like now we're looking back at like NoFX being like a 30. They've been around for like 35 years, 40 years. So yeah,
that's an interesting point. I just turned 40, so I'm a little bit older than you guys, but Same thing. I'm a hip hop dude, not a punk dude, but '94 was one of the golden years of hip hop. Some of the best albums came out that year. I never really thought about that. Like that's closer to the '70s than it is to now. That's actually crazy.
Yeah, right.
Wild,
so like you would sort of be listening to sort of like what your parents would listen to, and you're like, oh my god, that was so long ago. But now when you sort of look back, you're just like, whoop.
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like 27 years ago or 30 years ago, right?
What's interesting about, I don't know if you guys have kids or anything. I don't. But Tiffany's Gen Z cousin, he's 20, just turned 23. He moved from England and he lives in our building and he works for we have a social media agency. So he works for us. So he's fascinating to talk to, man. Like, because in my mind, like, I'm not much older than him. But really, I'm old enough to be his dad. And I don't realize that. And I say some things to him, or he says some shit like, what are you talking about? This was like, how do you not know this? And I'm just like, fuck, he's like born when I finished high school. And it's always a trip to me when you actually, I feel like maybe if you have kids and you maybe have a frame of reference, but because I'm not around younger people than us, really, often, being around a 23-year-old is just tripped me out. I'm teaching him about beer, which is dope, and he's loving it. So I'm just like, all right, obviously I'm always having stuff, so I'm like, try this. He's loving it, but it's just interesting to hear the perspectives of someone like that. When I'm talking about some music, like he knows the words to like some NWA stuff, which was from like 1988. When he was born in '98, I'm like, oh, that's kind of impressive because I don't know how much you know what I mean. Like
it's like us listening to like Tom Petty or something like that.
Yeah, and like loving it, which could possibly happen. I'm sure we all did listen to stuff before our time, but like, it's just funnier seeing the kids do it. And like, I saw a comedian the other night, and he was sort of like, he said he was talking to he was a little bit older than me, and he was sort of like talking to someone, in the 20s, and giving them references, and they're like, yeah, dude, I wasn't alive for that. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm your age. Like, and I was like, yo, I relate to that. Like, I actually feel the same. I don't feel old. But when you just put it like that, the 94 was 27 years ago. I'm like, Jesus Christ. That's...
Yeah. I feel like this age range right now that we're kind of in, like the 35 to like 45, like it's definitely a mind fuck where you still feel pretty young, and you can still move without hurting too much. But it's gonna be funny when I'm hoping that I still feel this way when I'm 50, where I'm still like jiving around, just like I'm like a 20-year-old kid, and just be like, I can still do a kickflip.
Yeah, I wonder that. Like, how you see the parent, you think your parents, and they're all like, what are you listening to? Like, I don't want to be that dude ever, because that's whack as hell to be like, to not understand. So I wonder if that.
You're not even gonna notice. It's just gonna happen.
That's what I'm worried about, dude. I don't want that. Like, I don't want to be that old dude. My parents took my music off me because hip hop had a lot of. I know, like, No Effects was pretty fucked up back in the day, but like the rap stuff was a little more aggressive and obvious about the cussing. So they hear me playing it, like, hey, you're 13, let me take this off you. And I don't want to be that dude. I want to understand what's going on. So I'm like, I feel like you are correct. It's such a weird time where you don't know that you're getting old, and you kind of don't feel it until you speak. I'm like, oh yeah, shit, maybe I am old now. I'm a bit washed. It's hilarious.
Like, I think the one thing that we can kind of all hope for is that we turn out like Fashion Santa, and we're just old, but kind of still like really kick it with the young kids. Do you know who Fashion Santa is, by the way?
Oh, yes, I do. Exactly. The guy from like Yorkdale or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Want to be him.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's got a fade. He's got the big beard.
The young kids love him. They love him.
Maybe the episode should be called Fashion Santa.
You should get him on too. I wonder if he's a beer drinker.
Yo, I mean, he looks like a hipster. I feel like he definitely would enjoy a single hop IPA.
That's probably all.
That's probably all though. Just Idaho 7. Just only Idaho 7.
Well, speaking of hops, Dave, like, there's some new hops that we're going to be using soon that are like, I feel like Idaho 7's a bit of a weird hop name, but aren't we doing like, what are the new hops that we're using? Like, they're like MD.
Oh yeah, we just ordered. HBC 630 is one that we just ordered to try out in an IPA, as well as I think we're talking about Brew One.
Yes, another good one.
So I haven't used either of those hops. I haven't used either of them before, but I'm excited to try them out.
I've had a couple beers with both of those, and killer. But do you know what would be interesting? I feel like a single hop or something. Like, are you guys going to try like a single hop to try and really see the expressiveness of those hops, or are you going to kind of melange them up?
Yeah, I think kind of anything is on the table. Like, I think for the size of batches we're doing, like, we like to kind of use like only like full bags, because we don't like that especially when you're dry hopping. We want the hops to be as fresh as possible. So we have like a 5 kilo bag, so it's like, yeah, I mean, the option is there, like to do like, yeah, one or two hops, but I mean, a single hop is cool too. Like, I think certain hops, from my experience, like certain hops, you need the right hop to kind of be a good single hop. Sometimes they, having the pairing for certain hops can go a long way, but I mean, it is really the best way to kind of understand that hop and understand what it's doing in your beer.
So
we did a version of Shine a while ago where it was supposed to sort of just be, before it got picked up at the LCBO, it was supposed to be a rotating hop.
Is that with African Queen and Southern Passion?
Yeah, and so
Nice.
The guys at I think it was Scott Labs, like a hop supplier, they got their hands on a bunch of the African hops.
Cool.
And they were the ones that sort of recommended to pair those two together, because they kind of complemented each other. So there's a guy that we sort of that we have one of our hop contracts with, and he's really good at kind of recommending pairings and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to kind of do the one-off hops, or just single hops, but it's also fun to just like dig right in sometimes and just kind of like pair up based on sort of recommendations from people that really know the hops best, I think.
How would you guys typically explore that? Like, would you say you've got these two new hops? Like, do you try, like, how do you decide what to pair them with? Is it just sort of like advice from people who've used them, or do you just kind of like, is there like you do the rub thing, and like what's the way you guys would go about figuring that out?
Yeah, sometimes we just, it's obviously like there's so many beers out there with different hops, so we like to that we'll pick up this and pick up that, and then like Jon said, we work with Bob there at Hop Connect, who's a great guy. He's always got a million suggestions. So we, I mean, I like taking suggestions from him because he's working in hops, and he kind of knows what works together, and then it's kind of, I mean, you think about it in different ways. You can think about it, I mean, how you might think about pairing like food with beer. You can kind of have like some contrast. You can have two things kind of working together. So we kind of pick a route we'd like to go. And so I think with one of the next kind of one-off IPAs, we're talking about kind of getting a little bit of a hop that is going to provide some like red berry and that sort of thing, mixing it with a bit of more of a stone fruit, and just kind of seeing what we can do, because there's a world of complexity that we can kind of create from that. Like and like I said, like some hops, yeah, they're great on their own, but some hops paired with 2 or 3 different kind of varieties, you can really kind of accomplish a lot, and kind of just kind of create something really kind of unique, and so a lot of it is kind of experimenting. We're not doing, our smallest batches are typically like 1,000 liters. So, we have some certainty going into it of what we want to get out of it. And I mean, sometimes never using these hops before. Sometimes we're pleasantly surprised, and sometimes we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll try something different the next time. So it's kind of, there is that element of experimentation still with it, which is, I mean, it keeps it exciting for us too, because there's so many hop varieties, and it's really cool. And we did one recently with like some like more of like citrusy kind of German hops, and stuff like that. And it's cool. It's you see like some of these hop varieties that are, you know, the same kind of hop growing in different parts of the world, and the different flavors that they create. It's really neat.
I love that. That's dope. That's a good way to approach it. I think, you know, just test it out. Beer and Emoja just said you aren't old until you went to Velcro shoes. That's actually pretty funny. I love that. So we're gonna keep that in mind. But like with that sort of that like you said, like whether it's contrasting or like, you know, the flavors that work well together, that ties into your kitchen that we haven't really spoken about a lot yet. Do you guys want to maybe like expand a little bit on what's going on there? Like you said, you had such a large space that you took a part of it and turned that into a kitchen. And I know that, you know, you've got a super active, head chef who's, on Instagram. He's super keen. Like, I love that. I love you got a passionate team about what you're doing. Tell us a bit more about like what happened with the kitchen and what sort of stuff you guys are doing out of there and how that pairs with the beers and stuff.
Yeah. Running a restaurant's just, it's definitely a bit of it's a blessing and a curse. Like it's such a forward facing thing, and such an intimate thing for people. You always, whether it's a social atmosphere or if you're like a foodie and all that kind of stuff, there's sharing a meal with somebody and people is definitely one of the most intimate and sort of engaging things that you can do, right? Mm. So there's a lot at stake, and it can go really well or it can go really bad. And the pandemic definitely kind of, it's been so long now since we sort of like operated it the way that it should be operated, right? Like all the way back to 2019. So we had some a little bit of turnover in the kitchen. Like it's been really hard to keep people around when you keep just getting slapped around by lockdowns and stuff like that. But so Ryan Goodfellow, he's a new chef in the kitchen, and he's got really good, and he's got a really good story, and like he's an interesting guy. He loves local food. Like he's got like a genuine passion, the way that like Dave would sort of talk about beer and kind of like just if you just kind of like put your mic on mute and ask Dave to talk about water, I'm sure you could fill up like 4 hours. That's not a slight, but that just shows.
Those would be the cuts for afterwards.
We can do a whole series, a whole season just on water. Water with Dave.
Yeah. Water Dave.
Ooh. Need to think about changing that handle, brother.
Yeah, just Instagram of like just pictures of water. But you sort of come across people every once in a while, and they're hard to find, and you feel super lucky when you sort of find them, where they're like genuine, down to earth, good people, and they have just a love for what they do and the finer, kind of smaller details of what they do, right? Like we've sort of like worked with some chefs in the past where it's like they can make food, but there's no like soul to it, right? Mm. And so I think what Ryan's kind of brought to the table is sort of that soul and like a genuine love for cooking that's really important, and something that you can sort of build a story and a narrative from, where people can kind of sort of latch onto that. And that's a really important thing to, I think, who we are as a brewery. And I don't know if this is like to our detriment sometimes, or if people sort of really love it and like really grab onto it, but sort of like tying so much of sort of what we do with sort of like our personal stories. Like it's really important, and it makes like a good place to sort of be a part of on a micro level, but sometimes like it's hard to, I guess, like market that and stuff like that, right? Like it's hard to tell that story unless you can kind of get people into the restaurant and kind of show them what you do and like put a beer in their hands and tell them about the story and tell them about the chef and like see those bean sprouts. Like we went out and like we picked those or something. Like bean sprouts is a bad example, but like see that thing on the plate, like the pork that you're eating, like we work with a farmer who takes our spent grain feeds it to his pigs, and then he sells us the pork to cook up, and that's sort of how it's on your plate. So there's a really intimate aspect of the restaurant, and like I said, like it takes a lot to it takes a lot of focus and energy, but when it's going and it's going well, it's such a beautiful thing, and yeah, like Ryan, we're really excited to kind of have him in the kitchen, because he can definitely sort of help us build on that story in the same way that we can kind of like build those stories around Dave, and let him out of the back of the brewery sometimes and talk about beer
and water
and just share and water and share his passion, and that's like really where the restaurant and like the building kind of come into our story, and it's the base of everything that we've kind of done, and I love sharing it with people. Like we do concerts and stuff like that at the brewery. We work with the guys that do Riverfest in Elora. So Riverfest, for anybody that doesn't know, is a 3-day music festival that happens in Elora every year, and it's about like 5,000 people every day that are in there, and there's been some really sweet acts over the years, but working with them allows us to get and sort of punch over our weight class when it comes to the musicians that we've been able to have in our brewery. For concerts, our max capacity is 135 people, and we've had some outstanding Canadian artists come through the building, and like a Montreal band, the Planet Smashers, like they play here all the time. They're like I don't know if you know who they are, Craig. They're like an old school ska band from Montreal, and they're all sort of like working dads now, and so once or twice a year they sort of just like hop on the 401 and then just like hit a bunch of cities down the 401 and then just drive home, and we've been lucky enough to sort of get them to come in every year. They love playing the brewery, and that's always a party, and it's crazy how much sometimes, like, admittedly, I'd sort of take that stuff for granted, sort of having that much going on at the brewery. It's like, it's a lot to sort of take in, but there's a lot of passionate people sort of that we've surrounded ourselves with and who want to sort of be involved with us. And I feel super lucky and super grateful about all that. But I really miss that sort of that thing that we can share with people. It's just it's been hard finding like that kind of like drive sometimes over the pandemic. And I'm sure sort of everybody kind of like feels that way, right? Just not being able to kind of engage with those things that have culturally always been so important to us, whether or not we really realize how important those things are, right? Like there's the interactions that you kind of have with your friends at home and stuff, but like going out and sort of being within this space with energy, like you can't. That's not something that you can sort of really buy, or it's kind of hard to explain. Like you got to be in a place at a time. Like that's sort of like the best way that I can kind of paint a picture of what we've sort of done with that space and what we try to do and what kind of makes me miss normalcy the most.
Yeah, man. It's a good point, because sometimes I feel like, I didn't really miss that much stuff. Everything's pretty chill. But I feel like you realize when you go to a show and you're in a room with 500, 1,000 people or whatever, or it could be 100 people on an intimate show, and you'd be like, oh, fuck, man, like this is crazy, yeah. And it's kind of annoying, because I'm looking at all of my friends in Australia who have been living normally for 9 months and going to 50,000 people at a sports stadium. My friend was sending me photos all weekend from the biggest beer festival in Australia. It's called GAP, Great Australian Beer Spectacular, they call it. And she was there for 3 days, and there was like 1,000 people there. She was sending me the photos. I'm like, fuck. And she's like, wouldn't be surprised if there's a case here. But like, they've been just living pretty normal. They're on lockdown now because they let people in the country, and the people who came in the country gave COVID at the quarantine hotels to the people working at the hotels. So they've gone and messed up, but they had like single digit, maybe double digit cases, and then they locked down. So, but then they'll get rid of it quick. So yes, I didn't feel really too either way. Like at first, yeah, but now I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. I'm used to it. But then when you see them enjoying it, I'm like, oh man, like I want to go to a live show. God damn it! Yeah. So I feel you.
It's like Peter Pan, where Peter Pan just like when he's or maybe it's the movie Hook with Robin Williams.
Where
like he just like goes about his life and his life is fine, but you don't really realize and then he sort of like forgets about Neverland, right? And then you sort of like go back there and like you realize how fucking awesome it is.
Yeah, it's got to
so
be.
Yeah, like it's kind of easy, or maybe it's just like a survivable mechanism or something like that you sort of just go about your business and try and do the best.
Don't think about it.
Yeah, don't think about it. But man, I'm just like thinking about it more and more because of like how close we are with like the vaccinations and stuff like that. I know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Like I was like, I know I think we're both basically opening up about the same time, and I'm like, I don't know, because I'm like, we didn't do everything here that Australia and New Zealand did. So vaccinations, cool, helping, it's going to contribute. But whatever the fuck they did, and I don't know exactly what that is, because I imagine that's a Trudeau job to call the Australian Prime Minister, being like, yo, what did you do? Can we do that too? And they did not do that, because they haven't been in lockdown since like September, and we are still in lockdown. But yeah, I'm like maybe cautiously optimistic, because I guess at some point you have to roll the dice and be like, let's see.
I think this is just a life lesson in terms of doing stuff half-assed, where if you go like right down and a lockdown is actually a lockdown, then hey, you just like do the time and then you're out of it and like you're back to normal. But when you sort of just when you half-ass it, like we've kind of done here, not to kind of get into it, but
yeah, it's a whole thing.
Like you kind of have to swim in it for a lot longer. But,
yeah, for better or worse. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. On a very quick side note, my camera is flashing, which means I'm going to have to change to webcam soon. So can we take a thumbnail screenshot just while that one's still going? Basically, I'm going to take...
What does that mean?
So I'm going to take a screenshot of the screen and we use that. I make that into the thumbnail for YouTube.
Okay.
So I'm going to hold up some beers because I want everyone to know that we're gosh darn drinking Elora. You can hold up some gorgeous cans right here. I'm going to grab them with my hand. Come on, get it like I've done this before. There we go. Okay, are you ready? Oh, Dave, put it towards your face more. There you go.
There we go.
There you go, John. Oh, that was gorgeous. I just didn't want to miss out. Look at that. That is stunning. I'm saying that to all your moms. That's beautiful. So the other thing, we're talking about the restaurant. Did you or were you able to like do takeout and stuff like that throughout this time? So people can still get...
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we do takeout, but like I said, like at the end of the day, like we never sort of set out to be a place that does food for the sake of food and all that kind of stuff. And
food to complement.
And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Is like we're sort of just doing it to kind of keep the wheels turning. But the brewery was always kind of like the place where people go to sort of like engage with like a bigger thing. You know what I mean? Like we always had live music. Like it's an awesome space to be in. And like that's what people sort of really miss the most about the brewery. Like we've always had good food and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it was sort of just part of like the bigger picture. So it's so like the takeout food's like done all right for us, but it's definitely not like kind of taking a place or anything like that.
Of course, yeah, it can't possibly. Well, then on the other side, I was going to ask, because you were already like, you guys were in a good position because prior to all of this, you were already packaging beer. There were a lot of breweries that were just straight draft, kegs where they were distributing. So they had to figure out the whole new distribution method, right? You guys at least had a lot of that covered on, previously, which is fantastic. How did that look for you guys? Was it a pretty natural progression because you have SKUs in the LCBO, the law, which no one talked about, god damn it, but the law changed in Ontario where you can have independent bottle shops, which I found that out like a month ago, and it blew my mind. Yeah. And I was actually mad at Ontario beer people because no one was talking about it, because that's what people were fighting for years, and then all of a sudden everyone's allowed to do it as long as you sell chips. I was like, what the fuck? This is amazing.
Yeah. It was kind of it was sort of a sneaky thing. So like going back to the start of the pandemic and the sort of packaging. So we were actually like just switching into cans as the pandemic was starting. So like we were like winding down our bottle SKU and then ramping up our can SKU. So I remember like the first week or the first couple of weeks that we were sort of shut down, like was when we were really starting to get our first orders of cans in. So like the entire restaurant area was full of cans, and we don't have like a huge space, like much warehouse space. So Dave just started wheeling pallets like down the bar, and so there was just like a mountain of cans, and you could barely sort of like walk through where people used to sit and like eat food. So that was sort of a weird thing, sort of transitioning into cans, but it was really good because like our volumes have definitely gone up. Like our package sales have gone sort of through the roof after going into cans. But yeah, like we were good at and figured out a while ago how to drive package a thing and then put it in a van and take it to a place, and how to route and like why we kind of drove to certain areas and why we sort of went drive to other areas. So we had like a really good base to sort of build off of, and then we kind of just really mashed over the line a bottle shop, an online bottle shop, like right off the bat, and my God, like I'm super happy that we put an online bottle shop together as quick as we did, because people, like at the start of the pandemic, like people went fucking ape shit for online orders. It was nuts. Like we had three vehicles on the road like every day, as well as a van like packed with beer orders like every day for like 2 months straight.
That's awesome.
And it was bonkers. And then, like you were saying, the bottle shops kind of started trickling open a little bit, and it was like I don't even know how it happened, but the government, it was more, I think, to let bars and restaurants kind of keep making money, but like the way that they wrote it out, sort of, and the way that Ontario beer laws are just in general are just like the whole friggin' thing is just gray and just smushed, right?
Yeah.
So you can read like 3 words. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. It's just rules for sake of rules.
Big facts.
And so when people started figuring out that you're allowed to sort of interpret gray smudges into sort of whatever they are, then they can't really do anything about it, right? So, and that's how the bottle shops started popping up, where it was like these places that weren't really restaurants before could kind of do this small thing in the background while they're just like slinging beers out the front. So it's like this thing just popped up out of nowhere, and yeah, like nobody really noticed either, right? So like some smart people read a little bit deeper into the rules and then really went for it, and that's how now we have independent bottle shops. They're kind of like convenience stores with beer, or just like takeaway restaurants kind of with beer, but whatever the definition of food is for these places.
Someone said it has to be just chips. Yeah. So you're right. It's like it's vague.
Yeah. So I think the definition is that it's something to do with satisfying a craving rather than like an impulse or something like that. So it's like as long as it's something that somebody can reasonably get sustenance from, then you can serve beer with it. But so like you can't just sell like candy, I guess. So if you can make a case for potato chips, like being able to make somebody survive or something like that, then you can sell them beer too.
I mean, I guess
that's what it is.
If they're smart, they'll do it like the Quebec, because the Quebec specialty beer stores are fire. You can go in there,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can get like triple cream brie and like fresh prosciutto and like baguettes that were baked on that morning and like all of that shit. If you can get
Yeah.
that alongside some like, you know, natural local wines and some craft beer, local craft beer, hand, you know, curated, maybe some spirits and stuff, like boom, it's a wrap. Like it's what it should have happened 100 years ago, but you know, thanks to the laws from the last pandemic, both of our provinces and probably the whole continent, if we're honest, has suffered from that, and they're still never recovered. Growlers were illegal in Quebec, I think, until 3 years ago. Same as cool ships.
Oh, really? What? Really?
Growlers, bro. Like, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
So, like, and, you know, just looking at both provinces, this is when we moved here. We couldn't believe, we moved here in 2012. I moved to Toronto in 2010, and then we moved to Montreal to keep me in the country in 2012. And when we realized that the park, you could go in the parks and drink, you could just have a packet of chips. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm looking around like, well, no one's dying. No one's drunk. It's 4 p.m. and everyone's chilling. Like, what's the big fear about in Ontario? Why can't they let people just be adults and you know, have a drink in the park?
It was the same thing when I was living in the UK, right? Like,
they do the same?
We like, my mates and I, like, would just, like, go to the corner store and grab a beer. Yeah, and then just go sit in the park and have a beer, and then the world didn't end. Right?
Yeah.
So when I ended up moving back to Ontario, it was just so weird, and it just felt extra stupid. Where it's just like why do you got to make rules just for the sake of making rules? Who are you benefiting? What's going on? It just doesn't make sense. But now things are and like you can do that with like some parameters, but the world didn't end when these bottle shops started popping up, and they won't end if people have a beer in the park. So it's just like, get over it.
It kind of seems like they're slowly getting past it a bit, which is nice just to see that. Like, that's probably one good positive side effect of all of this craziness, is that like a lot of these laws that were around before are being adjusted because of making sure that, like, even from as much as like a restaurant's allowed to sell a bottle of Smirnoff or some shit, like with your wings. And I'm like, oh, so I can just buy it and they just sell it at LCBO prices, so no one's getting really like ripped off or anything. It's just all like, why can't I do that? Why can't you make it? You know, Uber Eats is making money, the restaurants is making money, like everyone is winning. And then hopefully it wouldn't be a big brand, it would be like Dylan's out of Niagara, or like a small, you know, like a craft brewery or a local Niagara winery or something. Like, that's what you can buy. But just the fact, like, I think here you guys were doing it early. BC were doing it like years ago, from what I understood. My friends out there were telling me that. So like, it's almost like it's starting, like you know how like every province has its own. Some, you know, like Montreal, you can drink in the park, you do everything, but Ontario, you can't do shit there. You know, but then you guys in Ontario could go and sell all this stuff, and then no, you can't buy a beer when you buy your fries. Like, no. But like now, you know, everything's starting to even out a bit. It's nice.
You know, I think once weed was legalized and the world didn't turn into a bunch of heroin addicts immediately after, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not a gateway drug. It doesn't cause these societal issues and stuff like that. People just sort of got out of the way. Nothing really changed, right? The dude that always smoked pot is smoking the pot. Like, maybe your mom tried CBD for the first time and like her elbow stopped hurting. Like the world did not come to an end, right? So that sort of mentality where everybody's like, okay, yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And so now all these other laws, stupid law. When we first started, we wanted to do growlers, but so the way that our retail store was kind of set up, and the way that we had to get a liquor license to sell like a full pint, we had to have like a restaurant license, right? So half of our building had one license, and then where we sold beer out of our fridges had another license, and most breweries would like fill up growlers on the taps, right? So even though we were a brewery that kind of like was able to sort of retail beer right here and then sell pints right here, and then we somebody wasn't allowed to bring a growler into the restaurant to fill it up off the taps. So that's why we never did growlers in the first place. So like the analogy that they would use was like, you wouldn't be able to go into like a keg steakhouse with a growler and then take it to their bar and have them fill up the growler. And so like that's why, even though you're a beer retailer, you can't take that growler from 5 feet over there and take it to the taps and fill it up. So it was dumb stuff like that.
Just silly,
yeah. And so we never ended up doing growlers. And then another funny thing about growlers is like a lot of breweries here, it was a big thing for a long time, and then a lot of breweries started getting away from it. Just like there's a lot of like maintenance issues when it comes to sort of like cleanliness of the glass, and you really don't know sort of how your beer is going to get represented. And when the pandemic started, like everybody went crazy for growlers again, right? Like bars and restaurants, when they were allowed to start retailing beer, everybody wanted growlers, but it kind of like went like super quick, and then now nobody wants to deal with them anymore again because
it's too much work. It's not. You're 100% right, because you can't clean them. The cleanliness thing is a whole thing, and some breweries were only taking their own ones back. Like it had to be branded that place, and I think that wasn't because they were being picky. That was part of the law. It was just like, it seems like too much of a headache. Who even wants, I don't know, do you guys drink, like, I know maybe it's different because you're both in the industry, but like, I don't want a growler of anything ever. Like, are you guys growler guys? Or?
I can't remember the last time I had a growler of anything.
Right. And like,
growlers were kind of like the things that like friends brought to parties that like never ended up going home with you.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you can bring one of those big, the big bastards, they're like 2 liters and shit. Like that's cool for a party. You're right, because hey, everyone can have a pour, yay! And that's fun. But like, I don't know. Don't you just want this? Like, you could have one of these instead of the equivalent of 4 of these or whatever in the thing. Like, I don't, because that means now I've got 48 hours to drink it. Great, and I have to drink the same beer.
As brewers, we don't really want to do growlers because, like John was saying, like all of a sudden, then the quality of the beer is out of our hands. Where it may have been packaged good, but if someone opened that up and then drank it over 3 days, well, on the third day, on the second day, or whatever, 4 hours after you open it, the beer's oxidized, right? It's not the same. It's not the same thing that you sent away with, and then the whole issue of cleaning them and all that. So yeah, there's the growler people out there. There's people that are just like, what you see them. They walk into the brewery with their growlers, their 4 growlers or whatever, and it's great. At the same time, it's the pro to it is a cheap way to package beer for breweries who say don't have a canning line or don't have a bottling line too, right? So there is that aspect of it too. So you see more of the smaller places doing that, and I say if it works for them, it works for them. We like to throw everything in cans and our specialty stuff in bottles, but yeah.
No, I feel you. On that note, I gotta go to the bathroom heavy, but should we get the next beer and then you guys can talk about it whilst I visit the facility?
Sure, let's do it. What's the next one?
You tell me. There's 2 different Lodestars. There was a plum and there was a strawberry. Yes. What's the best order?
Well, let's do the plum because I don't have the strawberry.
Okay, no problem. Plum it is. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Do you want to tell us about that beer specifically?
Let's do it.
All right. Keep talking.
All right. Here it is.
Go for it.
So this here's headed to the LCBO. Is that? Are they at this? Sorry, got a massive echo here.
Yeah, heard that. So Lodestar was our very first foray into the sour ales. And so again, like it's another one that like felt that we were trying to chase a little bit, where we would start to see these pop up. We didn't really know too much about it, and we just kind of went down the road of trying it out. So I think the first batch that we ever brewed was a dry hop version, and I think the beer that we tried to model it after a little bit was Nectarus from Four Winds. That beer sort of blew my mind the very first time that I had it, and so we set out to kind of like try to do something similar. And so the first couple of versions we just played around with dry hopping and like a few different versions of the lactose strain, and then from there we got into fruiting it, maybe about like the third or fourth incarnation of it. And I think I can't remember what the very first version of it we did. It might have been Pink Guava was the very first version that we did.
That sounds familiar.
But and that one really hit home with people, I think. But Dave, you want to dig into the specifics of the beer?
Yeah, the plum is just like really, really bright. It's got a nice like kind of like citrusy, really fresh thing going on. Great summer beer. That's why we wanted the LCBO for the summer.
This one having plum, right?
The plum, yeah, that's good in the LCBO. Yep.
Beauty.
And I mean, Elora is like as a destination, it's a big time like summer destination. So that's why we have, we keep on different versions of Lodestar at all times, because it's a big seller for us. Through it, people come into the brewery for beers in the summer, and it's just like such a great, refreshing summer beer. So yeah, we decided on the plum because it was a really big hit. We've done it a couple times. Brewery's done it a couple times before, and it really just kind of shines. It's just like a super refreshing, super thirst quenching of a sour beer. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
I love it. It's such a cool series, man. So like, we even just while you were talking about it, then just trying to see some of the other versions that you've done. You've done a ton of these, eh?
Yeah.
There's like, looks like 15, 20 at least. Man, actually even more now I scroll.
Really?
Was this a series you guys did since the beginning, or was it more of a newer thing?
Yeah. When did we probably started Lodestar. It must have been like mid to late 2016 when we started doing that. Like I know it kind of came after Borealis, and yeah, like we were trying to look at sort of what the sort of new upcoming trends were, and so yeah, like we what I was kind of saying earlier, we kind of we tried some Four Winds, the Nectarus.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Nectarus, yeah.
And
good
Nectarus,
dudes.
That sort of like blew our minds. And then I think Jelly King was like starting to pick up steam at the time as well. And it was something that really sort of like piqued our interest, and like the beers that we tried, like we all sort of loved them. So we wanted to kind of dig into it. And yeah, we just started doing them. And then we did another one, and then did another one, and then did another one, and did another one. So it kind of just started going, because when we put them out, and it wasn't until like the octopus branding and stuff like that, that it really started to pick up. Like the very first one was like, it was like a very black label, and it was mostly just like, it kind of had like the same sort of like background, where like the landmass that's like behind the octopus on the label. And then, yeah, so it used to be a little bit more like scenic when it was on the label, the bottle label. But yeah, so it started out like a
Cool.
very dark, just kind of like a star on it, and then I don't know how the octopus kind of got in there, but we always kind of go down these rabbit holes with our labels and like the stories and stuff like that. But yeah, like it wasn't until we started sticking the octopus on it and started experimenting with fruit that this brand like really took off. And yeah, like every time we would kind of put one out, like we started doing like we kept them at very small batches at first. So like we would only do 10 hex. And then when they were in bottles, like maybe we would have like 1,000 bottles or something like that. And like they would sell out in like a weekend kind of thing when we would do like a new fruit. So it was a really fun beer to experiment with, and it still is pretty fun. We're trying to like figure out sort of like new ways to kind of experiment with it, but without kind of dragging it too far away from sort of what the brand is. And I think that it's either like a fruited sour or like a dry hop sour. And every time we go back to the dry hop sour, like I'm always sort of impressed with like the beer that's actually underneath it. Like when you strip away like the fruit and all that kind of stuff. Like the last one that we did, Dave, maybe you can kind of dig into it a little bit, but it just tasted like lemonade, and it was awesome. It was my favorite. I think it was the last dry hop one was like one of my favorite Lodestars ever, out of like even all the fruited ones.
What's the base?
Which one was that? Was that the base is just I mean it's just kind of your basic kettle sour churro wheat. You know, it's a pretty simple because it's the fruit or the dry hops that really kind of we want to shine in it. And like yeah, John was saying, I forget what was the last one. We did one with like Enigma and El Dorado or something like that. That was like, and I think that one was like it was like so like lemony. It was so nice. And yeah, just I mean the acidity from the sour just kind of really just kind of complements all these things. But yeah, I really like the dry hop ones too. But yeah.
You're correct. It was El Dorado and Enigma. According to Untapped, if Untapped is the Bible here, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's some really interesting flavors, and I think it's a good comparison. Something like Jelly King or, that's another one you just said before. But basically that sort of, you know, the series of fruited sours with a fantastic base to do it. I mean, you've done pink guava, passion fruit, the plum, peach, plum, and cherry, blackberry, cranberry, orange, which I had the other day. That was great. Mango and peach, raspberry and peach. Wow. Black raspberries, cranberry, foraged elderberry. That's cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I love that. Boysenberry, the El Dorado Enigma, strawberry and lime, which is this bad boy here, which I may have after. Nelson, just dry hop with Nelson, Sylvan. Lemon zested with Galaxy and Nelson. That's interesting. You've done a Brett version. Foraged elderberry. Love the forage.
I haven't done a good job of cleaning up.
Oh, some of these are user generated, probably, right?
Yeah. So I don't think we've ever done a Brett one.
Ooh.
How many check-ins were on that one?
Great question. It actually has a proper like they used your logo. 8. Totally.
Yeah, I think that was one that somebody just did, but we never actually
used.
I should probably just clean that one up.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them that don't have like labels on here. That like it got that generic like Untapped like little thing there. Some of them have
like some of them though were like at a time where so like some of them might have even been at a time where it's like I don't even know if we would have done like a label for it or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Still, it's cool to see. Like, I like seeing that there's so many different ones that you guys have done. It's like, you're obviously taking the series seriously enough that you've got like a solid base. You're like, all right, cool. Well, we're happy with this base. Like you said, it tastes like lemonade and all this stuff. What can we add to it to make it interesting for you guys? I think that's super cool. I love that whole concept. It's just great. And the labels, even now, I'm looking at them. They're just so like bright, like I just said, the strawberry lime one. Like it's very similar to I didn't notice actually. I don't know why I didn't stare at it, I'm looking at this one with the plum side by side. It's like all these pink and purple, and like, it's just cool. It's just interesting. I like it, man.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with the labels. It's kind of it doesn't always make sense, and but yeah, like we kind of go down this rabbit hole sometimes with labels. Like we've only worked ever with one artist,
Okay.
and who sort of has done everything for us since day one.
Mm-hmm.
We have done some one-off labels with a couple of local artists. A guy named Luke Swinson. He's an Indigenous artist in Kitchener.
Dope.
We did a label, or he did a label for us last year for our Canada Day Pale Ale that we did, and then more recently through Luke. Ended up meeting his dad, and his dad's like an awesome artist as well. So we ended up doing a label with him recently as well, and it's always like both Luke and August are awesome dudes, and that was a lot of fun, and it kind of takes us out of our comfort level working with Blake, who goes by the name Jetpacks and roller skates, and yeah, but it's a lot of fun, but Blake has always been awesome for us.
I love it. Yeah, man, it's cool. You got like a real signature look to everything, and it's cool seeing. Like I'm looking at like 5 different cans here, and there's like at the very least the font is the same, and like there's like bright colors, and there's just things in the same place. I don't know. I appreciate branding. I have a respect for breweries that just take their branding serious. It's at a time where you can't really get away with shit branding. I feel like it's important because it's a consumer product, and as you can imagine, there's people going to an LCBO where, in 2015 it was a different era. You go there now, there's a large selection, and you have to stand out. And if you're able to create that nice brand, consistent branding across the board, like it's attractive, and a lot of people don't know what the fuck they're going to pick, and they're just going, oh, this is a pink can with this octopus on it, it's sick, like, oh, I'm going to grab, like you need something that's going to sort of jump out at folks. So I like it.
Yeah, and like we've always done all that stuff in house. Like we've never, like it's always been like Blake and I, and then one of our other partners as well. And like we've always kept it in house, and like it's taken a long time. Like I feel like we're just starting to kind of get a better idea of like the brands that have done well for us, and like why they do well for us, and what we kind of want to say with our labels and all that kind of stuff. Even sometimes like they're wacky and weird and don't really make sense. Like last year we did a lager with fruit in it that had 2 reverse mermaids riding a tandem bike.
Is a reverse mermaid?
A reverse mermaid is like fish a fish head and then leg bottoms. So like it doesn't make sense, and sometimes it doesn't need to make sense.
No, but
it's more about like the story, because like the story is with the reverse mermaids is we did a beer with there's this company called Toque Limited. They do a print magazine. So Toque magazine is just like this incredible regional lookbook. So it focuses on like different like makers and artists and bars and restaurants and all that kind of stuff, and like out in this region. And Friends Forever was a collaboration with them, and that had like a goose on it and like this fish. And then so for whatever reason we thought it was a good idea to tell a story about like the fish that was in that label. So like that fish like ends up like just kind of like going on tandem bike rides with a fish bud. So like there's a lot of stuff like that, and then we're coming out with like another IPA soon called Travel Buddies, and like that's going to be our new IPA series, and it's like the bear from like we use like this bear every once in a while, so like the bear's kind of coming back, and we try and like tie stuff together like that. And unless I told you the story about it, anybody would just be like, why the fuck is a fish riding a bike?
Hey, if that's what helps people, generate interest for it, then I'm here for it, man. Like, and it's got to be interesting for you too, as a business owner. You're doing all this stuff. Like, if it's not like, not stupid in a bad way, but if it's not like it's ridiculous, I guess. Like it's I've never even heard of a reverse mermaid, but as soon as you said it, I got exactly the vision. Like that's awesome.
Blake
you came up with it.
Yeah.
I love that. Like it's cool, but it just like once again, just looking around, I can see particularly like with the octopus and like like the characters. If you've got the same artist doing this stuff, like it makes sense that it would that consistency will play through regardless of what it is. So I like that, man. You have to have fun. It's beer, right? Like who cares? Like it can't be overly serious.
And like that's something that you kind of have to, at least like when you start kind of running like your love of beer as a business, you kind of have to like slap yourself in the face every once in a while and tell yourself that, hey man, it's just beer. It's like it's supposed to be fun, right? And like it's lucky that's kind of turned into an industry that's been hot and people have kind of like looked at it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're slinging beers and you want to listen to some tunes and drink a beer and hang out with your buds.
Basically, yeah, exactly right. And like there are people obviously that overanalyze it, and that's part of the game. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of people just want to have fun, and they want ridiculous stuff. And I like that you guys are doing like cool, fun kettle sours and great haze and great crispies and stuff. It's like a nice little sort of balance of everything, and maybe some the barrel aged stuff that's coming and stuff. I mean, that's it's perfect. It's great, and it matched the branding and all of that. The whole package, I guess, is what I'm saying. It seems to really align. It's really interesting to speak to you guys and sort of hear this now, and I feel like I get the whole, the whole story and where you guys are coming from more. It makes complete sense. Beer and a Bozo was just asking as well. Have you soured a beer with water pH only? I don't know if that's like super water. We're going to get back to to water too deep.
I don't know what that means.
No. Okay.
No. The question is no. The answer is no.
Maybe one day.
Like, would he like be or he or she be referring to? He, okay. Be referring to just like the way like using like sour malts too, or what? I don't know.
Not sure. Sounds fancy. I've never heard of that.
I don't know.
We should try it.
Why not, right?
Well, maybe we should just get some acid rain. We could maybe try to do an acid rain beer or something.
That's what I'm talking about. It can't be bad if you ferment it. Acid rain.
For the first ones, right?
To take acid rain and just be like, coming from the heavens, since the world is kind of ending these days anyway. Like, fuck, it's
right?
meant to just capture some of that. Fermented
a bit.
Acid
rain. That was the thing when we were a kid, when we were young growing up.
Yeah.
We don't have acid rain anymore. It's
was it a real thing? It was a real thing, right?
Back when we were kids, it was a real thing, yeah. Same with quicksand and...
okay, that type of thing. Okay, yeah. All right.
No. I think acid rain was actually a problem for a little bit, but I think they outlawed one of the chemicals that
caused it.
And quicksand is real.
It is real, no?
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure I saw it on TikTok.
It's got to be in Australia if it's real. If it's something that's going to kill you, it's got to be in Australia, no?
I mean, we're pretty thug out there. We deal with stuff all. I was just talking about that tonight. Like everything here is like soft and cuddly and chill. Even the spiders, like, oh, you little cutie little spider. Like, it's not going to kill you. I like it.
What about drop bears?
Yeah, the drop bears. The drop bears will fuck you up. When you said bear on the can, my first thought was, oh, it's a koala. I'm like, oh, hang on, Canada. No, it's not a koala.
We did do an IPA called Drop Bear.
You did?
Yeah, and then it turned out that I think Market Brewery did a Drop Bear IPA.
I thought it was Dominion. Market did Bear Hug.
But I think they use like the theme of a bear like a lot, so I think they did do like a drop.
They did a drop bear too. Okay. Yeah, still, I love that you guys know it because it was like our little like Aussie joke that used to tell people, like people like ask dumbass questions like, "Oh, do you ride kangaroos?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." Like Like I had, like you could pull out your Aussie driver's license. Like, yeah, this is my license. I get to ride. And people believe. Like I was saying, the Steve Irwin thing. Like people would believe it. You can say anything. It's awesome.
Well, we got it from Dean, our Aussie hopcore. Do we not? Where it was a double IPA with all of his hops, and I think that's where it came from. Was it not? Where he's like, oh, you should call it drop air. I'm like, all right,
you're like, what's cool. That?
I think so. Or no. Yeah, so it was all Dean's hops. But I was looking for we did another IPA with just his hops, and we called it Arvo, and but like the branding wasn't great on that, so I googled like mythical creatures Australia, and then drop air came up. And it's so funny if you Google drop air, all the photoshopped koala bears. Like
it's like dropping down to get you.
Oh, just like their teeth.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
Do you know what's hilarious? I went back to Australia in 2016, and my aunt and uncle took us to I'd never seen a koala in my life. I lived in Australia until I was 29. Never seen a koala in my entire life, and we went to this Australian wild, like, because my girlfriend was with me, so she's never been. And we went to this Australian little place in like south of Melbourne, and it was like they had, you could feed kangaroos, and I'd never done that stuff before. I was tripping out, and they had like emus right there and stuff, and we did this thing where you have to take the picture with the koala, and I was bugging out. It feels like a rug, like you can touch it, but they're really dumb. They've got thick skulls because they're in trees. If they fall, so they won't be brain dead. So like they turn. They're like they're really absurdly slow, and you have to keep feeding them the eucalyptus leaves, or they'll fuck you up or whatever. But they're like, it's just really funny watching the lady, like they can barely recognize. She's like, oh, they only recognize me if I'm in my khaki Steve Irwin, little work shirt, but they won't recognize me otherwise. And I never touch one, and it's like because the fur is mad thick, and it just kind of feels like a carpet or a rug. It was really weird. It was cool to actually see these damn things. And then Mum recently is sending me photos from her like friend's house with like koalas in the trees. I'm like, really? My whole life I've never seen that, and you're just sending me photos now like it's nothing. It kind of pissed me off.
Your mom lives like in like a house that they used to live in, or
so no, the house that they're in now, they moved since we left, but she was at her friend's house. So like where we grew up was like suburban Melbourne, so like literally no different than living in maybe not North York, but like Pickering or something like that, like just a normal suburban city area. So like just normal shit, nothing crazy. You get the big spiders like the huntsmans that were pretty big, that would be as big as your palm, and they'd be up in the thing. You're like, oh fuck, here we go. And you have to kill it with a slipper, we call it, a thong or whatever. And then there's this big squish on the ceiling because they're big. Like they're as big as your thumb, the body, and they're juicy, and they got big ass legs. So you'd see them and you'd be, oh fuck man, you gotta go get it. But that was just because we were near trees. But then we never saw any like koala. Like you see kangaroos here, and I've seen them before, but I never like fed them until this zoo place. But Mum's friend lived in not the sticks, but like a more regional area, I guess, a little further out, and then they had them there. We went to her friend's house, and we actually went back in 2018. We took Tiffany's mum, my mother-in-law, there, and she's from Jamaica, so she never in her life did she ever think she was going to go to Australia. So she was loving it. It was so awesome watching it through her eyes. I loved seeing her, like she was just so excited. And we went to her friend's place in there's this thing called Mount Dandenong near Mum's place. We grew up near there too. It's just like a big ass, kind of like, well, it's bigger than Montreal where we are here. Just like Collingwood, maybe not skiing, but just big ass mountain region. And we went to her friend's place, and the Mum's friend's husband was like, what's this? So there's a bird called a kookaburra. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? They make that little...
Did they sing about it on the Wiggles?
Basic.
That's the extent of my cultural...
Got stuck in his head right now.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't, because they're pretty distinct. I'm not going to mimic it, but they do like a laugh. That's like a real distinct thing. And he had strips of meat, And we're like, okay, so they got this place that's kind of overlooking like a bit of a valley on the mountain. And I was pretty impressed. I'd never really seen anything like this before. I was like, yo, this is crazy. And he's holding out this meat, and these fucking kookaburras were flying up. They got these big ass razor sharp meat. They'll fuck you up. And he was holding the meat, and they would just eat the raw meat. They would fly up and eat the raw meat out of his like hand. He'd hold it to him, they just eat the meat. And I was like bugging out because I'd never seen anything like this before. It's pretty, like, if you look at it, if you look it up, you see it. But it's interesting down there. Like, I'm sort of happier to not be around all that stuff because you can, like you said, a lot of things try to kill you. So it's nicer to be around just little soft, tiny little balcony spiders. Like, oh, come here. Like Tiff's like, oh, get rid of them. Like, no problem. Don't worry. Like, I'll get rid of you.
What's the there's a name for like redneck for
Bogans.
people that live in the Bogans.
Bogans.
Okay. I can't remember my housemate from Leeds. He ended up marrying an Aussie girl, and I think it was like her uncle like came to the wedding, and I guess or it was like a family friend or something like that, and they like warned me about that guy not to drink too much with him, and they called him a bogan, and I didn't really sort of understand what that was.
It's like I guess it's not necessarily a positive thing, but it's not a negative thing. Like, people self-identify as that, maybe, but maybe people don't self-identify as a redneck as much. But it's essentially the same.
They do.
They do. Okay.
They do. I think it may be more like a hick or something like that. Would be like our equivalent.
It's more like I guess basically that, and just the way it's so funny, man, because even I'm from there, but I never always like felt aligned. I'm not aligned with that human being. So to me, they're this comical caricature of a human. So I'm not like, oh, that's my people. I'm like, no, that's some weird dude that talks that. So I like hearing them talk because they use words and the way to describe things that I would just never think of. And there's almost nothing funnier to me because I understand the culture. To hear these guys talk, it's just so funny because they're so like extra. Just hear, even just going to the football, like the Australian rules football. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's like going to them, listen to the people talk and the shit they say. I don't even know if I couldn't even mimic it to make it funny, but they're hilarious. These people are just like their own little world and they don't even know it. The Bogans are pretty funny. It's just like like fucking get over here, Shazza, give us a beer, would ya? Like, that type of over the top. And that's not even fun. Like their whole like, oh, it's so funny. I do appreciate when they do that stuff. They don't even know they're being funny.
I love that you sort of get that sort of like big cultural shift within like a similar group of people, where you don't have to go too far to find people that like it happens a lot. Well, like it's all over the place in the UK. Like you go like down the street and somebody's accent, say like in Bingley, which is like a suburb of Leeds, is like totally different from like somebody that like lives in Leeds, and like by the end of like sort of living there, like you can tell. But it like that always blew my mind about how you can have like groups of people that are from the same country, not that far from each other, but they just sort of live and think a little bit differently, or have sort of just grown up in such a different environment that they sort of like approach sports or language differently. It's crazy, and it's super interesting.
I feel is there anything? I mean, I imagine that there's something like that here. I mean, you could compare it with the Quebecois, like the more rural Quebecois that are super Quebecois, and then the people in Montreal that are kind of more international and chill. Even just from being not from here and seeing that, or like what do you call them? Like I got mates from Nova Scotia. Perk the cur and the cur perk, eh? Like those type of like trailer park boys. Like that is so funny to me, but I know that most of the people I speak to aren't like that. So I'll make fun of, what are you talking about, eh? Like, and people like I don't talk like that. I'm like, you kind of do. Like, you don't know. Like, but it is different.
I feel like on the East Coast, I think it's a little bit more noticeable.
Yeah.
And in Quebec, like you said, just like the pockets of different kind of Quebecois and stuff like that. And once you kind of go out east a little bit further, it kind of like starts mashing up into sort of like the like that old sort of like settler, like French like explorers kind of coming in and just like setting up in different spots. So like I think you get that more sort of on the East Coast than you do out here, and
Right.
it kind of happens more province to province. In Ontario,
That's a good point.
you're so I feel like you're so exposed to like American media and sort of mass media that you don't get like a whole lot of difference and stuff like that. And like I don't know
Yeah.
if that's it or what, but I don't the way that you could just literally do like a 10-minute drive in the UK and then go to a different town and people speak differently, like it doesn't really happen here.
I agree with that for sure.
I don't know why.
I definitely would say that because I'm super conscious of accents, like I notice that my Canadian friends and people here, like if I hear an accent, like, oh, they're South African, they're New Zealand. Like people here, like, what? They're not Canadian? Like they don't even notice. So there's probably something that maybe because I'm mildly traveled, like just through Europe and North America for the most part, but like I'm aware of accents. You can pick it up, and I'm coming here and I'm like hearing how everyone talks, so maybe my radar's up a little more. But I notice there's like certain friends that kind of maybe don't do the full like East Coast thing, but do it a little bit more than others, or little things like that. And like the Toronto thing, like the Toronto man's accent, which is the funniest thing in the world. Yo, fam, yo, what's going on here? Like that type of like that whole kiss the teeth and all that stuff. It's like learning all the nuances of all of that stuff. It's like fascinating because I didn't understand it at first. It felt so foreign. I was like, what is wrong with you all? What's your problem? And I could never identify it. And then understanding the Caribbean culture and how that impacted the slang, and then how that goes on. And then like there's like the rural Ontario stuff is like slight, like a touch of the East Coast, but not quite to the same level. Or then if you want to bring in like the Newfie stuff, which almost sounds like Irish if you hear a full Newfie talk.
Yeah.
Like I can't even try and imitate that either, but that's like a whole wild thing. But yeah, there's a whole like what's the word? Like a diaspora of accents and sort of vibes here as well, which is fascinating because it took a while. I've been here, like I said, almost 11 years. So I get it now to a degree. When I first got here, I felt super foreign. Like I didn't really get it. And now the more time traveling around, spending, I don't talk to Australians aside from my brother. So like I'm like just in it. And then here on top of that, then there's the Quebec. And they're hilarious. The feel like, and they think it's funny when I make fun of them. They love it. I love them. They're so funny. Like the way they talk is hilarious to me because I started to understand the nuances of it all and stuff. And then they think it's funny because I'm a foreigner and I think they're funny and I mock it and they think it's funny. It's like, it's awesome. I know the whole language accent thing it makes life interesting,
Do you think your accent has changed at all?
Yeah.
Here for over 10 years, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I've lost a lot. People back home give me so much shit. And my brother, you hear him, and he's like, oh, yeah, nah, like fucking this, like he's like super Aussie. But mine is like dulled. Yeah.
I always thought that you were South African. I didn't know that you were Aussie.
There you go. So
you get that at all sometimes?
Yes, when I worked at Tiff and I met at the Apple. I used to work at the Apple store at the Eaton Centre in Ontario, which, fun fact, is the busiest retail environment in Canada, like everywhere. So I spoke to people every single day.
Sounds terrible.
It's horrendous, and it was really bad. And people always came up to me and said South African. I was like, why? Because to me it's all hard and fast, like bastard. That's not me. I don't talk like that. I know they call them Saffers in Australia. Like I know mad South Africans because they all come to Australia. I'm like, I don't talk like you motherfuckers. Like I'm completely different. So, but I can understand. People will say you're British, you're Scottish, you're Irish, you're from New Zealand. I'm like, no, but I think I've got maybe a bit of a bastardized.
It's on mix. Like I feel like it's on your vowels. Like when you say you, like that's kind of where it kind of
the Aussie comes in, or where other things come in.
No, where the South African comes in.
I can
I've got a buddy who's actually South African, and he grew up there, and your vowels kind of sound the same, and that's kind of why I was thinking
from that. So I imagine
Yeah.
it's because I found this interesting. When I first moved here, I didn't want to repeat myself. So like you say, can I get a bottle of water? And they're like, what? I'm like, water. I've had this multiple times. I've had water. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like they didn't understand what I'm saying. I'm like, I didn't think it's that difficult. I've had it in the States more than here, if I'm fair. Like I've had people like straight up look at me like I'm crazy, like speaking another language. But I found that it gets to the point where you don't want to repeat yourself, so that by sort of nature your accent dulls. Like I don't think it's gone in my head. I sound Aussie as hell. Like I'm completely. And then I speak to my brother. I'm like, oh yeah, no, not so much. I don't know why. For some reason, he has a stronger identity, a cultural identity than I do. So his accent is stronger. It's just some people may have that. I was happy to leave. I love it there. I still do. I appreciate it now. I needed to leave to appreciate it, but the accent I think has just dealt. And also on top of that, I'm like, I got a Canadian girlfriend and I live in Montreal. I don't know any Australians here, and I'm talking to these French people all the time. So like,
yeah.
there's language.
Do you know French now? Have you picked up some French?
Oh yeah, we went to McGill, and to keep me in the country, I got a study permit, a student permit, and we went to learn French full time at McGill for 6 months, and I got really good, and I passed the immigration test, and then now I suck at it because we live in, it's called Myland. It's like kind of like the hipster area, and nobody really, you don't need French. If I need to speak it, I can read the signs. If I need to order stuff, I can, but I'm mad. I've got no confidence because every time I do it, people either switch to English or they'll just ask me what I said to repeat it again because my French accent is terrible. So it's like, I just give up.
How old were you when you took the course? Because like, so from what I've heard, like learning language is a lot more difficult the older that you get.
100%. I was September 2012, so I was 31.
Yeah.
And
how did you find it?
Difficult because I walked into class the first day and the teacher it's immersive French, right? And the teacher was speaking all French. And I walked in, I'm like, hey, is this level 1? Is this the beginning in English? I'm like, level 1? And she's like, yeah. It's like, oh, fuck, okay, this is what's up. So like the whole day, this was 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. 6 months straight. Like we did three levels of 6 weeks per level. I passed them all. I kicked ass. I got like A's and B's and shit. And I was never the brilliantest student, but I paid it. But you had to like lean forward, like, all right, you can't even like look down at your phone or do something else for 1 second because you miss one word and you don't know what the fuck they're saying. So like you're staring, and I remember just being exhausted because you're like mentally you just like you can't switch off at all, and you have to soak it up. But what that did though. 6 months of that full time, they told me, was like 4 to 5 years of doing it sort of in school worth. So we compacted it in this short period. Tiff was younger, so she's better at it than I am. I just have no confidence unless I'm drunk in an Uber. If I'm drunk in an Uber, these mans talk to me, I'm like, I'll go give it a crack. And it's fine. But it's a funny...
This guy's making no sense.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. And they play along because you're drunk and like, oh, gotcha, you're another drunk guy. But like, you just don't need it here. I go to a cafe if I need to order any. As long as you bonjour people here, like, you go, bonjour, can I get a oat milk latte? And they're like, yeah, cool. Like, they don't not understand you. I'm like, if I want to be fancy, I could French it up, but I don't need to, so I just don't. And does that make Montreal pointless? Well, I just like, it's nice that it's around. But for the first while, it was really hard to just do stuff. To like, every time I made a phone call, I was, boom, my heart was racing. I'm like, I'm not going to get what I need to get. And then, because they're not going to understand me, and I'm going to have to deal with some bullshit. And I've told my friends here that, like, wow, I never thought of that. Like, because they can all speak French, so that they don't understand that it's like actually a problem. But this day, I don't know, maybe I've been here long enough, I just don't even care. Before I used to get nervous, like, bonjour, parlez-vous anglais? No? Okay. Like, you can just get them straight to it. But as long as you hit them with the bonjour in the beginning, good to go.
That's because like they can also tell, right? Because like you say bonjour so
terribly.
They're like, oh,
yeah,
fucking English.
And
so
also,
I'm just going to speak English to this guy. That's how you can kind of get around in France too, right? Where like you just say bonjour in like the most English way that you can, and
they're like
What do you want?
Alright.
Yeah, it's what. Even when I was trying to speak French and actively like practicing, they would switch to English. I'm like, oh, come on, man! Like, let me try. Like,
Yeah.
let me work this out. But they wouldn't let you. So then you just give up. But then the other way, you go, oh, they call it. You go, bonjour. I'm so sorry, my French is so bad. Do you speak English? And then as soon as you get like apologetic and you kind of like mean it, they're mad cool too. So like, as in like, but you don't get like, ugh, I have to speak French. Like if you get in that attitude, they'll probably give it back to you. But if you sort of come apologetic, it's different.
Yeah, and I think I think because like most of them know English, that it's like that they sort of just want to know that you'll try before kind of just like giving you like the easy way out and speaking English to you.
Yeah.
When I was living in the UK, like my friends and I, we went on this bike ride through France, and we camped. So it was like this like long like 3-week bike trip that we did, just like camping everywhere that we went. And we got to this one campsite, and it was late. It was like just before they were closing, and luckily my friend spoke French. Like he was okay at it, and this guy was like grinding his gears, like speaking French, like speaking quickly, and then so like really was forcing Tom to use like every little bit of French that he had until he was like, okay, and then just started speaking English to him, because like he ground his gears like hard and just wanted him to put in some effort before he made it easy on him. And I think that's kind of funny, but and I feel like culturally, like I feel like people want you to try a little bit.
To try. I get it. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a respect thing, right? It's like if you're coming here, just give it a shot. Like
give it a crack, man. And usually they were more times than not, they were sort of, oh, he's trying. They were sort of like super nice to you, and they would talk really slow, like, you know, what do you want or whatever, you know, shit like that. But I noticed that when you're talking about France, when I hear a French person speak and a Quebecois person speak, it's two different things.
So different. Yeah.
And it's like, it's so much easier. If I hear someone from France, I can pick it straight away now. And I'm like, oh shit, I understand everything you just said. And then the Quebec person, like, blah, 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 I'm like, oh fuck, I have no idea. Because sometimes I can, bonjour, ça va bien, toi? Like, well, you can do it real quick, and I make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. Then they'll be like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh fuck, yeah, sorry, dude, I understand. Yeah, like, didn't understand the word. And I just feel like the apology is what gets you over the line. But as long as you tried in the beginning, as you're like, désolé, je ne parle pas français, ma français est mal, and they're like, you know, they're like, okay. And then they'll, even if they're struggling, it's like cute that they're trying because they know they're better at English than you are at French. And it's like, it used to piss me off and be frustrating, but now it's just funny. I don't know. Because I'm comfortable. But it took a while to get to this point. We've been here 2012, what's that? So 9 years in July we've been here. So it's been a while. But it's interesting, and it's cool, at least, even if you want to bring it back to beer again. I know we've had our own little yap for a while, but you know, like the beer scenes between these two provinces are fantastic, and I think something that COVID's done is created like an interest between the two, because people who would travel more for beer, we've all been stuck for the most part, unless you didn't give a fuck and you gone to Florida. COVID doesn't exist there, but you know the apparently not. You know, people like the most exciting thing we can do, like, is, you know, if you're in Quebec, get Ontario beer and vice versa. So that's been like a cool little, like, you know, keeping things sort of more local and bringing that sort of like view back to each of the provinces. And like, you know, hopefully when things now, you know, today actually in Montreal, the curfew, or in Quebec, I'm sorry, the curfew lifted. We had a curfew since January, which is now gone. And then in a couple more weeks, I think everything opens up, and they're giving it a trial. I think you guys are too. So that means that travel between the provinces is going to be open. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited about that, because the border to the States is still not open, and it might not be for some time. It's probably smart. So I'm hoping that there's going to still be a lot more of this cross-border interest, being that, you know, maybe over the summer, a lot of people from Quebec will go to Muskoka or something. On the way, they'll cruise through some Toronto or different towns, LCBOs, and be able to discover more beers there. and then vice versa. People who from Ontario go up to Tremblant or Laurencic and all that type of stuff, and really trying to discover both the scenes. So like, there's a nice little bonus in there. There's an interest between us. I think that's really cool, and I hope it can benefit you guys as well. That people can discover you in a bunch of LCBO. One LCBO, before I say that, is the one on the border. It's called Hawkesbury, Ontario.
Hawkesbury. Okay.
So that's where this is ridiculous. But to my left is our balcony, and I have a bunch of like garbage bags full of the empties because I can't take this can to my supermarket because they won't give me the 10 cents for it because I didn't buy it from there. So we bring them to Ontario and we go to Hawkesbury, and Hawkesbury is the closest LCBO to Montreal. And it's sort of like on the 47, just off the 417, sort of towards Ottawa. And it's like this border town. And that's where a lot of people from Quebec go to discover Ontario beer. And I feel like that is the place, if you're going to get your product in anywhere, to start to get some interest here. If you have a presence there, even if it's just a couple of SKUs, I feel like that's going to get some interest, particularly now that, I imagine the borders are probably open at this point, or they will be soon. It'll start to maybe generate some of that interest, and that will, now people can travel. They're going to see where you guys are, and I actually didn't realize where you guys were. You're a little bit north of Guelph, right? Like, it's not like southwest. I thought you were deep southwest. It's like just north of Guelph, which isn't too far even from Ontario, right? I'm sorry, from Toronto. So like it could lead to a bunch of interest from people from out of province. You can finally travel a bit more and looking for something interesting, cool, fun.
Yeah, I'll let them. I'll let our LCBO sales team know.
Yeah,
and like we, like one of the things that I'm kind of grateful that we saw last year is that a lot more people are traveling close to home. So the tourist traffic in Elora last year was just like, it was bonkers. Like in the 6 years that we've been around, and I've been 6 or 7 years that I've been living out here, I've never seen that many people in Elora. Really? It looked like Queen Street West.
Wow.
On a busy summer day in Toronto. Jeez. Kind of thing. It was just like mad people. It was crazy. But I think that's definitely one of the things that's kind of helped local businesses and businesses in small towns is people don't have the option to go as far and wide as they used to, and they're discovering a lot of hidden gems and stuff like that. So it's awesome. And if there's one thing that I'm thankful for, is that maybe this has kind of spurred a little bit more interest in people sort of exploring a little bit closer to home. We do get a lot of people from Toronto coming to Elora. So so that's pretty cool.
That's dope. Yeah, I hope that's going to just expand more. Like there's going to be more people from here, from this side, coming across into there and really discovering that, because I think that's where the thirst is, right? Like when people want that itch scratched for something new and different and exotic, like before maybe here, because I think at least in Montreal, because we're so in a lot of these border towns, even like Sherbrooke and all of that, everyone's really close to the border, so they'll just zip across to Vermont, and whether they go to Maine or Massachusetts or stay there or go to upstate New York or something, there's a bunch of options. But when that isn't an option, like you said, exactly right, they've been sort of forced to discover the hidden gems. Like, oh wow, like all of this amazing stuff was in our backyard the whole time, and now the backyard will extend between the provinces that we haven't really been, because this is the second summer with this stuff, but the first summer that we know that shit is like not going to be okay. Yeah, like exactly. Before we were like, is it going to end? Is it going to end now? What's going to happen? And now we know, like, all right, well, this is life. So
I think it's going to come back like stronger than it was before. Like same as when we were talking about music and restaurant dining and all this stuff. People are so excited. Like how excited you get out to a concert, or have dinner with your friends. I think we're going to come back stronger for it. I think that's a good thing, because I mean we've always had a good culture of that stuff before, but I mean when you look around other parts of the world, we don't have that deep of a culture with that sort of things, and I think it ties into being able to have some beers in the park, or have some drinks in the park. You look around the world, and a lot of cities in Europe and like I've been to South America, they all have like a town square, and town square is just like there's maybe there's roads that go around it, but it's just like public space. If it's park or if it's designated to pedestrians, and most of these places, yeah, you can have a drink and you can do whatever. And our cities aren't really designed around that. Our cities aren't designed for the public in that sense, for the pedestrian walking through. And I think that's one thing we're kind of missing over here. And I think that it can only come back stronger. And I think we're seeing the signs of it with the bottle shops opening up and that sort of thing. But I think that it kind of has to, because everybody wants it. It's silly to not allow that sort of thing. And in the end, yeah, there's going to be a couple idiots, but really it's just bringing people together and sharing that kind of thing that we all love to do with each other.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think that's like there's a like you said, there's like a need for that more than there ever was, because people have missed, like we're all saying, like there's that connection that we're missing, whatever that connection might be, whether it's like you said, like a live show or just sitting at a restaurant and stuff. So I mean, maybe step one is the patios and people feeling more comfortable and knowing there's not really any transmissions is happening outdoors, and then they're opening indoor dining, and then people get used to it, and hopefully that'll sort of lead to a nice rollout of a safe way that hopefully this spreads as little as possible. Maybe we can just sort of operate as close to normal and have these sort of connections again that we maybe don't know that we're missing because it's been so long. And we don't know that we sort of are missing. I mean, some things are obvious, and that's why I didn't even like to think about it. You guys were talking about all the travel before, and I was like, I just tried to think about it. Just easier not. Because it's sort of like, we were looking into going to Australia. I'm like, even just, they lock you in. You have to pay for it. They lock you in the quarantine hotels. Doors are locked. Windows are locked. You're locked in that shit for 2 weeks, and you got to pay for that shit. Like,
wow,
that's so grim.
I'm like, I'd love to visit my mother. I haven't seen her. We were supposed to go like start of last year. Now I don't know when we're going to go, but like I'm not super comfortable with being locked away for 2. I understand why, but I also don't want to wear double masks on this 20 hour, 20, 30 hours of flights or whatever either. So like, there's, really? This is the next best thing, is to make sure we're just going to keep it super local. And I can't see that going anywhere for a while. And I feel like it's definitely going to benefit a lot of the local economies and just allowing people to really, look in their backyard or at least within their region, from Toronto, you guys aren't too far from there, and so on and so forth, and just be able to like, wow, there's some really cool stuff here. We should, be visiting these places more often, and it's some great beer and great food and great whatever, any other products, maple and blah, 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 that people are producing in different regions. And maybe that's a positive side effect of all of this. Is sort of, it brings that thing back to local. It shows you when you can't go anywhere, what's left. Like local is what's left, and the people and the businesses and stuff. And that's why it's kind of like, hopefully everyone wants to see all the businesses survive, not even just breweries, but everyone wants to see it all survive, because you don't want to come onto the other side of this and then there's nothing left for, in any cities or towns. It's interesting, yeah?
Yeah, really, really, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But boys, I feel like I don't want to keep you guys up too late, because now we spoke about we're up to midnight. We hit 3 hours because we were just yapping. This was a ton of fun, man. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you both, man. The beers are fantastic. The branding is killer. I love everything you guys are doing. I have for a long time, but even more so now. I've actually got to hear from you both, and congrats on everything. The shit is killer. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll keep sending you some beers, and let's rendezvous with the tourism office again when you're if you're comfortable traveling sometime soon, and
yeah, man,
we'll try and get you down to Elora, because it'd be sweet just hanging out for some beers and
love to
and drinking and catching up again. This was a lot of fun.
Nah, man, I appreciate you both. It was really great to finally connect and meet Lager Dave and meet you, Jon, that we've been talking for years. You guys are awesome. Seriously, like I'm really proud of everything you guys are doing. It's so sick, and I love it even more now that I got to hang out with you guys. So we'll definitely be there. Now I realize how close. I thought Elora was far as fuck, man. I thought you guys were like deep southwestern, like Windsor, Ontario level, like 4 hours from Toronto. Like if things like allow and we're able to travel to Toronto, because I would like to see my brother and my mother-in-law at some point. You guys, how far are you from Toronto? Like an hour tops?
Yeah.
Hour a bit,
yeah. Good traffic. You're like an hour.
All right. Well, we might even be able to figure something else out without even tourism nonsense to be able to swing by and hang out. So let's keep keeping in touch. I appreciate it.
That'd be great.
Stick around at the end of this. I'm going to wrap this up and then we'll finish up after. But where can everybody find, if you guys want to be found individually, but where can everyone find you, Elora, and you both online?
Yeah. So Elora Brewing Company, straight up Facebook, elorabrewingcompany.ca, old school website, and at Elora Brewing Company on Instagram. And we do have a TikTok. We've got a couple videos on there. So awesome. Yeah, I think there's one of Dave when that like trend was there, where like he threw a shirt at somebody and then like it changed their clothes and stuff. We've got a video of that up there, and then we beat the shit out of a 2020 pinata. Yeah, that was fun.
Dave going in, love it.
So yeah. Thanks again for having us.
No, I appreciate it. Dave, do you want to be found?
It's been great.
Do you want to be found anywhere, Dave, or you want to just?
I mean, I'm on Instagram as Lager Dave. That's my handle, so you can find me there if anyone's wants to reach out or. Yeah.
We'll send you some kisses.
It's just pictures of water.
Mostly water.
Just water, yeah.
And also follow the new one at Water Dave everywhere.
Water, yeah.
It's just going to be
I'm gonna have a solid 3 followers. It's gonna be great.
Two of those are going to be me. Don't worry, I got you, bro. Boys, stick around. I'm going to wrap this up and then we'll chat out. But thank you both seriously for hanging out. This was awesome, man. I had a really good time. Appreciate you guys. Genuine pleasure, man. Guys, everyone, thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, and hit the notification bell so you know when all the new episodes drop. Follow us on social media at BAOS Podcast everywhere, and make sure you check out the long-form audio. We are available on all networks, and you can hear attractive gentlemen like Uncle Dave and Uncle Jon talk about craft beer. We'll be back next, let's just say Thursday. I can't even remember. At 9 p.m. We'll be here. Follow us on Instagram. We say why and what's happening. We'll see you then, guys. Peace.